like to wish to change read. I have one item. I'd like the board support to add an item at 5A to give a comment about shoreline management. Does that have anything else?
I do. Discussion on the situations with parties in Louisa County requirements thereof.
Make that 6A. Anybody else?
There's one at your desk, gentlemen, a resolution to proceed with the parking lot and fencing at the middle school. That's a fiscal year 2011 capital improvement plan project.
Let's go ahead and make that 6A.
So moved.
Mr. Barnes?
I think we're going to need the minutes from Saturday as well.
Yes, I've got that down with the item 12, minutes approval. We got January 18th in our package, but you also been given February the 5th, so when we get down to that point, we'll be voting on both of them.
So moved.
Mr. Barnes and Mrs. Spencer, further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. The first thing we have tonight is a presentation of resolution commending Jonathan Taylor for receiving the Boy Scouts highest award of Eagle Scout. Mr. Barnes?
I could have Mr. Jonathan Taylor and his family and troop leaders come down front.
Come on, Grandma.
Right there.
We got mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and
Hey, man, it's a family operation. They all helped him get there.
You also got a troop leader, Mr. Quarles, here.
they got to be from
Chairman Gentry, honorable members of the board, this is a resolution commending Jonathan Taylor for receiving the Boy Scouts highest award of Eagle Scout. Whereas Jonathan Taylor, a member of Boy Scout Troop 3, has successfully completed the requirements for the prestigious Eagle Scout Award, the highest award given by the Boy Scouts of America, and whereas only those young men who have been outstanding in scouting and who have provided exemplary service to their troop and community can receive the Eagle Scout Award, and whereas Jonathan Taylor has developed leadership ability and earned the esteem of his community and his fellow scouts, and his scouting achievements reflect the highest ideal for American youth. Therefore, the Board of Supervisors of Louisa County has resolved to recognize and congratulate Jonathan Taylor on his receipt of the Eagle Scout Award and commends him on his outstanding achievement in qualifying for this high honor. I get the
Mr. Barnes will present.
On behalf of the Louisa County Board of Supervisors, I don't know if you all are familiar with the rank of Eagle Scout. Everyone that I have known that have received this prestigious award, that end up being presidents, senators, no pressure on you, young man. But a lot of well-known people have received this award, and we take great pride in presenting it to the judge.
That's all right.
Said great things that he, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Good job.
Good job.
Congratulations. That's the best turnout we've ever had.
That's an important thing.
I made sure that I asked him if he had the civic government badge, and he could sit there and tell us what we're doing wrong, but it looks like he's not going to do that.
He didn't have enough time.
Next, we have a presentation of reinstitution of the fluoride program in Louisa County Public Schools. I don't see Mr. Jones.
No.
Is he supposed to be here? Well, we'll be right there, because I don't see him.
Who's that?
Mr. Jackson. All right.
Item 3, we have a presentation of Department of Conservation, Recreation, and Water Quality concerns at Gold Mine Creek.
PowerPoint up.
Okay. Yeah. Hard following the Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. Everything's fine. I wanted to thank all of you for letting us come talk to you. We talked to the folks from DCR and a number of our partners. Spoke to a group a couple of weeks ago here in Louisa, and concerning some problems with some of the streams in the area, and one in particular that's in Louisa is Gold Mine Creek. So we wanted to come out and specifically make sure we met all of you supervisors here in Louisa, and make sure that you all are aware of our proposal to work on a plan to help improve these streams. These are the 6 streams that we're actually focusing on for this particular plan. And this implementation plan, or cleanup plan as we often like to refer to it, is something that we work with citizens in the localities that they're actually in to try to develop ways to improve some of the problems in those streams. So we expect that it would be a local plan. So the reason we're here, our sister agency, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, completed a TMDL in 2005 for these streams. There is a Virginia law called the Water Quality Monitoring Information and Restoration Act that requires a TMDL plan to be developed for all completed TMDLs in the state of Virginia. So we're here to discuss the development of this specific plan, which involves Louisa County, to reduce the bacteria entering these local streams using voluntary practices to improve local water quality, and to hopefully seek your support in doing so. So, TMDL, what in the world does that mean? It basically is a pollution budget. It's the amount of pollution that a stream can tolerate from a specific type of pollutant. So, for example, we're talking about bacteria here. This is not something you want to take a big gulp of necessarily. That's for sure when you're swimming around in a stream. And there's always that potential that it could be a problem for your health. So, not to scare anybody, but that is one reason that we're here is because we do want to try to clean up the streams that have these bacteria impairments. Because it's really our right to be able to use those streams for recreation purposes and fishing and that sort of thing. A TMDL is a process to restore water quality. So what happens is we've developed a study in 2005. That's been a while ago. Now we're here to work on this plan to try to clean up the streams. And then we're going to see about, from that plan, what types of practices and various types of solutions to put on the ground to try to clean up those streams. So it's included in that plan. We review the study, try to update any information that may be outdated. Implementation actions, the cost and benefit analysis, that's a very important part. We have to know exactly what we're getting into in terms of how much things cost and the relative benefit of those costs. Measurable goals and milestones to be met throughout the entire process. Typically, we look at a 5-year span of time to try to make significant accomplishments. We have stakeholders' roles. That would be any citizen, agencies in the area that want to be involved. Potential funding and funding sources, state, federal, nonprofit, possibly, and public participation. Here's a fairly simplified map that shows the situation of those different watersheds around Lake Anna. Gold Mine is that darker green section right in the bottom in Louisa County, of course. Gold Mine got on the list back in 2002 for these bacteria impairments, but the actual study was completed in 2005. The bacteria sources are actually quantified in the TMDL, so we try to look at all of the different sources that might be out there. There's many out there, but what we try to focus on are, first of all, anything that's permitted by the Department of Environmental Quality, and actually a straight pipe that would lead to a stream. Then the rest of it's all runoff. I mean, there's just many opportunities for the rain to hit the ground and something run off into the stream that shouldn't really be in the stream. So we look at wildlife input in addition to some residential input. For example, straight pipes or failing septic systems. Pet waste is a really big issue we found. Directly to the stream and residential land use runoff. Agricultural, sometimes there's agricultural inputs into the system. We work very closely with the farming community in all of our districts in trying to reduce those impacts. But there's always improvements to be made. So a lot of that's being done now. A lot of those activities are happening now. And I'll show you a slide on that in just a minute. So the implementation strategy focuses on human-controlled actions. Even though we realize there are wildlife inputs into the system, we really have to focus on the human contributions of waste. So we look at excluding livestock from the stream corridor, for example. And there's a lot of that that's been done in Louisa already. Improving pasture and cropland management, removing straight pipes that might discharge directly to streams, repairing and replacing failing septic systems, and managing pet waste. So the actions that we actually look at, we try to identify and quantify control measures that reduce bacteria. We have quantified technical assistance that might be needed to help farmers maybe do different types of activities on their land that could help reduce any type of inputs. Estimate cost to implement. Like I said earlier, that's critical to the process. And determine benefits of implementation. All of those listed there. So these are just some pictures to show you what some of those measures might include. Septic system pump outs, alternative sewage disposal systems, some of those other residential efforts might include pet waste composters, just simply education. I think a lot of times with the community on the importance of picking up is crucial. Rain gardens can help filter a lot of runoff, infiltration trenches, excuse me. And then some of the more agricultural related measures might include fencing, riparian buffers, and watering troughs. So the process that we follow, we've already had the one meeting. We're going to have another one tomorrow night in Orange if you all would be interested in coming. It's a more in-depth meeting. But basically, we set up these working groups that usually meet right after the public information session. We have three different groups: the agricultural, residential, and governmental. We have a steering committee that's made up of a representative from each of those groups, key agencies, and other citizens in the community that are interested in clean water. And then the residents, landowners, and business owners show up hopefully at the final public meeting where we hopefully approve the plan. This is just to give you an idea of our timeline. We are now in February, of course, and we're hoping to be finished with this by July. And hopefully we'll have some good concrete approaches to how to deal with these local stream impacts. This is a map that shows the TMDL implementation plan status in Virginia. And I wanted to turn the presentation over now to my colleague, Charlie Lunsford from our central office.
Thank you, May. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This map here, I just wanted to show you tonight, obviously is a map of our state. there's a lot of shading on here and green. These are areas actually where local communities have gone through this TMDL implementation plan process. And these geographical areas that are shaded are actually with the darker, the green here, the green colors, are actually in the implementation phase that May talked about. The ones in gray here, there's several in grayish color you'll see. These are the areas now where we're just starting to work on the implementation plan. And obviously the upper part of the York River Basin is kind of up there if you kind of know where you are. I'm sorry I don't have a pointer. But the thing I wanted to point out, that one thing this whole process about doing these implementation plans has been going on in our state for about 10 years now. And things have really started to pick up in the last 5 years. The other thing I have shared with the board tonight is a success story on the Willis River project, which is in Cumberland and Buckingham County. There in the James River Basin. We started working on an implementation plan there in 2005 with stakeholders, local citizens and local government, saltwater conservation districts, Farm Bureau, Cattlemen's Association, Health Department. And we finished up the implementation plan, and they moved forward into an implementation project. This year in 2011, we're moving into the 6th year of that effort. And the Willis River, the entire system, river system, is 66 miles. And since we started working there, 33 miles now are attaining the bacteria standard that May referred to. One of the things, what they've accomplished during this period of time, there's been a lot of work done in the agricultural community. They've excluded over 4,000 livestock from streams, and they've started to work on the residential situation with failing septic systems and straight pipes. And what I want to point out too is just far as over that 5-year period, now moving into the 6th year, there's been $2 million invested there in that local community. These funds have come from state funding, federal funding through our local partner, Natural Resources Conservation Service, that works like the soil and water conservation districts do. They do it at the federal level. And I should mention too, the citizens of their contribution out of that $2 million has been about $300,000. So obviously the citizens have paid part of the share as well. So I just wanted to share that with the board to just give an example of, and we have other success stories on this, but this is one that we're still working on. This year, because of the success of that project, we're moving into the Slate River in Buckingham County and starting we finished up the implementation plan last year, and this year we're moving into that area and providing implementation dollars in the Buckingham County side of the Slate River. What we like to do is do these things small. We do them locally, and when we have success, we continue to build on that based on local interests and local community participation. So with that, I appreciate your attention and allowing us to make this presentation.
Mayor Charlie, thank you. I'd like to comment that also there was a public information meeting here on January 25th, and Mr. Barlow and Mr. Havison and I had the opportunity to come to that meeting. We had a very good turnout as far as farmers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm actually surprised you came back, but anyhow. We had a wide open discussion. A lot of the concerns was the cost, particularly when you got down to the county level and the citizen level. There wasn't anybody in the room that argued the point that, well, should we have good water or not? Everybody wanted good water quality. But unfortunately, we're looking at this organic TMDL, we know in the near future we'll be looking at other TMDLs from other point sources, all related to Chesapeake Bay, and all this means a lot of money. And I speak to the rest of the board, we're quite concerned, and we passed a resolution to that effect about the cost involved. and we're talking about a lot of big costs. And so hopefully, they did give us a long list of rent, place, and all this stuff, but I think that's going to run out by the time we get to the other TMDLs for the Chesapeake Bay. But appreciate you coming. I see if any board member has any comments or concerns. Mr. Spencer?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Lunsford, for coming. Is that, I've got that question in my mind, is that who's going to pay for the farmers to put the fences up to keep the cattle out of the creek?
Who's going to pay? Well, we have programs that they're called cost share programs, because we help share the costs, and right now in TMDL implementation areas where we do a plan, we move forward in the implementation. The state, we're directing we're paying for 85% of the cost for livestock exclusion. Our statewide program, just our basic program everywhere, pays 75%. But we're paying a higher incentive in the TMDL areas because one thing, obviously, we need a high level of participation in these areas to meet these water quality goals. So the farmer puts up the other 15%, but on top of that, there's also a tax credit on their contribution. There's a 25% tax credit on the 15% that they pay for. So
If you hadn't got it, what are you going to do?
what's that?
Farmer hadn't got it, what are you going to do?
Well, right now, what we're doing in these local plans is voluntary. We have farmers in Willis River who haven't excluded their cattle, but
But soon it's going to be mandatory.
I can't.
Is that what you're looking for?
I'm not looking. That's not what I'm looking for.
But I mean, is that what's coming? Can you see that coming? You know more about this program than I do.
I don't see it coming next year. If you look at the Bay watershed implementation plan, there's some goals in there about stream exclusion. Like 45% of livestock are excluded by 2017, and then it goes up 2025, it's 95%. When I look at what we're doing in these small plans, it's an opportunity because it is coming. It's not being driven by what we're doing. Mr. Gentry mentioned the Bay TMDL. That's the big umbrella out there now that is obviously over the last year has ratcheted up because EPA now has a TMDL on the whole Bay. So we have an opportunity at these small local levels to provide a higher assistance of funding that when it does come, hopefully a lot of the farmers are already being placed.
Second question. Is Gold Mine Creek happens to be in my district. And that creek gets the most dispersal of biosolids anywhere in Louisa County. And so you're telling the farmer his cow or his dog can't go to the creek, but you could dump 25 tractor-trailer loads of sewage sludge on the farm. Does that make sense?
Well, all the source issues are looked at in the TMDL study, so that was considered. But when we work on our implementation plans, a number of local communities, biosolids have come up as an issue, and we will look at it. We'll continue to discuss and see what needs to be done. We won't ignore it. I mean, if that's the local issue, we need to address that in the implementation.
We need to know if that's the issue at Gold Mine Creek.
Excuse me?
We need to know if that's one of the issues at Gold Mine Creek.
Well, yeah, we need to go back and look at the TMDL study first and follow up with that. Obviously, we work on the implementation plans. DEQ does the TMDL study side. Our staff does cover a lot of the meetings when they're done, and I didn't attend the Gold Mine Creek TMDL meeting, but that's something we need to go back and look at. So I hear what you're saying. I appreciate that.
Because we got a lot of folks sitting here tonight from Lake Anna, and they want the water quality too. And we want good water quality, and we don't like seeing what's going into Concord Creek, and we don't like seeing what's going in these other creeks. And so the TDML is great, but don't put stuff down that's going to cause it to go bad. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate your comment.
Mr. Bauer?
Of the TMDLs, what percentage is attributed to agricultural versus residential recreation? Do you know?
Only thing I could say is that 70% of our TMDLs in Virginia are bacteria, and if you look at, when they look at the amount of bacteria that's generated in these watersheds going into the river systems, creek systems, if there's livestock, they're the biggest source contributor based on amount of waste, because if they don't have cattle fenced out now, if they had them all fenced out, that wouldn't be the case. But so, I mean, I would say agriculture is one, especially livestock, for bacteria impairments is a major source, but I can't give you a percentage. The other one is obviously failing septic systems,
You got one horse and you got the other.
the human side of it.
What are we going to do about the failing septic systems?
Well, we have one thing that's good about that too in our TMDO areas. We've been able to direct cost share funding to correct failing septic systems. Our program offers 50% for any resident, but we ratchet it up to 75% for low-income families. And we have worked with some local partners on septic systems where some residents have gotten 100% and they couldn't afford it, which we run into those cases.
Thank you, sir.
One of the nice things that came out of the meeting that we had the other night, even though I don't think many of you guys really liked me for my comments, but one of the nice things that came out of it was all these polluted streams that are going into Lake Anna, yet Lake Anna is clean. And, that was at least good information that we found out from the projects, even though these 6 streams are polluted. The question I have is, and the whole point I was trying to make the other night is, what you're doing here is great, the voluntary process. But even you allude to the big hammer will fall in a couple of years. And I personally have friends who are farmers that have streams that are over a mile on one side of their property or right through the middle of it. And my question is that we had a big controversy in this state over taking land for the public good. Now, how do you answer the question when Big Brother comes down, EPA, in a couple of years comes down and says, we're going to fence you out 50 feet or 100 feet from all streams? Isn't that taking somebody's land for the public good? And I revert back to what Mr. Spencer said. If this is for the public good, why is a private farmer having to pay 20, 30%?
Well, I think everything I've seen, even with the EPA proposal, what's going to happen if this thing moves forward, more regulation? I'm talking about EPA and the Bay thing. I think what's going to happen is, okay, let's say by 2017 we didn't get to 45% in the Bay thing. We only have done 25 or 30, and folks are saying this is not enough. Then, and what they're talking about, they want to ratchet up the incentives in the first few years, make it really high, so hopefully we'll get a lot of farmers to participate. But if they're not participating and we are not meeting our goals as we move along, then I think that's where there's going to be more of, I don't know that they're going to, I don't take your land or take your 35 feet.
No, but you won't necessarily be able to use it.
Yeah, but one other thing about the Bay thing I think is important to point out as far as this fencing, they're talking about if the farms that have 20 or more animals get their cattle out of the stream, that will take care of the 95% of the pollution load. And half of our farms in Virginia, half of our farms that have livestock have less than 20 animals. They're not really focusing on those. They're focusing on the 20 or more. So some of these folks that have small farms or a few animals, I think they'll probably end up under the bar.
Yeah, I would just like to comment. I really do support what you guys are about right now. What I'm afraid of is the future, 2 or 3 years from now. And one question keeps popping up to everybody is, are these rules and regulations, are they going to be done by a bureaucrat in EPA or DEQ, or are they going to be legislative action through the state and through the federal government? Who's going to make that decision? And the way I look at it as a board member trying to protect my folks is that where EPA's not elected, and we went through this on roads up in Northern Virginia where they made that board to pass out taxes on roads, and this is another way of taxing folks. And so my question is, will it be legislative action so it's legal and give you guys the right and power to do this down the road, or is it going to be an EPA bureaucrat making that decision?
Well, I think the tone of the watershed implementation plan that EPA's been working on with the states was they asked the states, what are you going to come up with to meet these targets? But then I think you saw the reaction to that. Then when the states kind of fell short, EPA came back and said, well, this is not enough. But they didn't come back and said, well, you need to enact this law, enact this, whatever. One of the things, so I still feel like, EPA is going to allow states to work through some of these issues and their legislatures, whatever they need to do to meet some of these targets in their watershed implementation plan. Because you're dealing with, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York. There's a number of different states here all involved in this Chesapeake Bay process.
And isn't it true that 40% to 60% of all the pollution that goes into the Chesapeake Bay is coming out of Pennsylvania and New York?
I think you have to be careful about that. 60% of the load for sediment comes out of the Susquehanna River out of Pennsylvania. But one of the major contributors, especially in Virginia, to the bay for nitrogen is Potomac River. So Susquehanna is the big one for sediment.
Was that nitrogen coming from the raw sewage at Washington, D.C.?
Point sources are a big source in Potomac, yes. But obviously point sources have got to do a lot too, because they're in this whole process on the
I agree. I wouldn't drink any of the water out of these streams. So I'm for getting that cleaned up. However, I just want to see, the main thing we're looking for on this board, that in discussions I've had with others on the board, is we're looking for equity. And we look at Virginia as being, I know to some, we may not be at the top of the list of being responsible folks. But I think with the amount of money, the amount of regulations, the amount of support that we've had from the citizens, is that Virginia has done a pretty fine job, especially if you compare them to the other states in this water region.
All right, if nobody has anything, we'll move on. Thank you,
Thank
Ken.
you.
Thank you.
I would make a comment to the audience and to the public that there's more to come on this. Please keep on top of it, because it's going to be a money issue. Thank you again. It's after 6:30, and of course we promised to have our citizen information period at 6:30. That means that I'm going to, item I put at 5A, that I want to make a comment about the shoreline management, because I know some folks here to talk about that. I wanted to just, for folks that didn't know, back in 2005, we finally got to the point of forming a shoreline management committee. And so I wanted to know how it started. It wasn't a committee made up of just board members when we started writing ordinances. It was made up of a group of people. We had two folks from the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Harper and myself. We had two planning commission members. That was Jack Spear and Mr. Spencer. At that time, we had a development group, Murray Johnson, who probably a lot of you know, a local surveying engineer. We had B.J. Blunt, developer, and we had two members from LICA. Tom Nyman and Bill Bolden, I wouldn't say it, I probably still said it wrong. And we also invited Spotsylvania County to join in with us, and they declined even to be part of the committee. But the point I'm making here is all this information that now we're discussing all was formed by this committee. And one interesting thing about the committee, and it was a very good one, we found very quickly in looking at specific issues that it was very difficult to write an ordinance to cover every incident. And all of some people in this room, your peers, the angles, and all these depths of water, it was very complicated to come up with with the ordinance that fit every scenario. And for that reason, as a county, we left it wide open for people to come and make requests for review or a special variance for their particular incident. And that process usually takes somewhere between 30 and 45 days. And I think it's simple to say that if we continue to get the same items over and over and over and over for review, the next process is to kind of look at the ordinance, see if that can be tweaked somehow or another to if it was reasonable reviews, to try to change it. And that probably starts at about 45 days, I would say. So I want to tell you is when it came to, for example, one of the things we're hearing a lot about from folks, at least I am, is the 5-foot depth. And I can honestly tell you, the only time I remember 5-foot depth being mentioned, and maybe some people in this room can correct my memory because it's not too good sometimes, that when we're talking about when you had a cove area at the mouth of the cove, when you started looking at 175 or 200 foot pier going out into maybe toward the channel, that we looked at as a perspective, this may be unsafe. So this was more from the frame of mind of where do we get to 5 feet? And the 5 feet came from the state as far as supposed to be a fairly decent depth. My concern is with the drought issues, that may or may not be a good number now. But that we would cut that pier off at that 5-foot point versus going out, 200 feet. In a cove, it's not quite as much a problem because there's 1/3 rules and all this. But the point that a lot of folks got stirred up about in the last week is the 5-foot depth. If your property right at the shoreline is 5 foot deep or more, it's been interpreted that you don't get a dock or a boathouse there or whatever. And I think we've got to throw that up and maybe even look at it again. So there's some people say it's a good thing, some people say it's a bad thing. So anyhow, I just want to make that general comment so folks in the room knows that a lot of discussion, a lot of thought went into this, and we had one of these boards that we scribbled all over. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And we could not always come up with a statement that covered every scenario. So anyhow, with that being said, I do have quite a few folks that want to talk about this issue. The first one I have is John Carroll. Now, please give your address and your district you live in, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is John Carroll, 362 Overton Drive. I'm in the Cuckoo District. And first, I'd like to say that I spoke with almost everybody up here tonight. I've tried to contact all the board members. The only one I did not speak to is my fault. I didn't get hold of them early enough. But it's been a real eye-opener how easy it is to talk to board members. And Mr. Byers, I didn't know well at all, and I was able to call him up and speak for half hour. He listened, and we had a good conversation almost across the board. It's easy to talk to you fellows, and I think that's probably not the case in a lot of jurisdictions. But that's one of the beautiful things about living in Louisa. And this may be aimed a little bit more at the crowd here tonight than the board, but I had 3 people. I've gotten I don't know how many phone calls in the last week. I had 3 people say this is Dale Mullen's fault. This is the county attorney's fault, and nothing could be further from the truth. That's just not the case. Mr. Mullen, if anybody that's familiar knows, he's a great friend to the business community, and you know to be further from the truth. He's got a job to do. He was asked a specific question. He gave a specific answer. So we need to move beyond that. We tried to tell everybody that. It was great to talk to y'all. I appreciate your time in the last week. Speaking for the Lake Anna Chamber of Commerce, we hope that when this is resolved, any mention of depth is removed from code unless it pertains to the exception process. I feel that was the intent when it was written. I spoke to 5 people that served on the committee that Mr. Jones talked about. All 5 of them are on the same page. Several of them said that if anything, the 5-foot depth was a minimum for a reasonable dock. Several are in the room tonight. I have 33 site plans. I went through my files, and I'm sure I didn't find them all, but I found 33 site plans that I did approximately the last month for docks in Louisa County. Obviously, in Spotsylvania County, that's not required. Of those 33 docks, the way code is being interpreted today, one of those docks would have met this 5-foot requirement. 1 out of 33. And the only reason that one met the requirement, it got shoved into a hole, from the 1/3 rule and from several other rules. There's one dock. That means that if the code is being interpreted today, 97% of the docks I did last year would have had to go through the exception process. And it's not an easy process. I've been through it 4 times. And granted, all four of them were granted, but it's not an inexpensive process, and it's not a quick process either. Of the 16 there, I think some of the board members are under the impression, especially after talking to Mr. Byers, I think some of the board members are under the impression that Dominion kind of rubber stamps these things when they come out of you guys, and that is absolutely not the case. Mr. Kemp can tell you, there's a lot more restrictions. It's a lot more difficult to meet Dominion guidelines than it is the county guidelines. A whole lot more difficult. Of the 33 that were done last year, I think it was 16 of them would meet current Dominion guidelines. There's been some changes in their rules and regulations in the last several weeks. I don't know if you all are aware of. Right now, those site plans right there, 16 of 33 would meet current Dominion guidelines. So it's not like once you guys approve something, that's the end of the road. We still have to go back to Dominion, and that's a big job. You know, they're on top of us. Dominion requirements are much more restricted in the county right now. Those 33 structures, I talked to 2 dock builders today, and trying to get an average, the dock builders I spoke to today felt that was $1 million spent in the county last year. $1 million. I'm sure a lot of that got, a lot of the materials were purchased in the county, and obviously it adds a huge tax value to properties around the lake. And also, I hope, I know there's a lot of rules I have to follow. I'm not a legal guy, so I don't know. There's going to be a certain timeline involved. But this has absolutely put people out of work right now. It's taking work off my table right now, and that's the truth. And I see other people out here that I know for a fact are unable to do work right now. So that we just hope that if whatever the county decides to do, we hope it can move forward in a timely manner and happen quickly.
Thanks,
And I thank the board for allowing me the time to speak.
Again, we need to try to keep it as close to 3 as possible because we have a lot of folks here. Next person has BJ Blunt.
155 Irish Way, Jackson District. I served on the shoreline management with Mr. Spencer, Mr. Harper, and Mr. Gentry, and it was actually a pleasure working with you fellows as well. And it was a very difficult thing to try to include every situation, really almost an impossibility. We had the 5 foot in there, and my recollection of that was as to exceed, if you were going to exceed the 150 foot maximum distance, then you would try to reach a minimum of 5 foot, because everybody feels that a 5 foot is kind of the minimum depth that you need for a boat. You know, boat drafts 2.5 feet. Every summer we lose 1.5 foot, 2 foot of water, and so 5 foot's generally a good depth, and that's at the back of the pier, so it's really not an intrusion. As a safety factor, what we were thinking, that if it went past 150 feet, somebody might want to go out, 150 foot on every piece of property just to get more depth and stuff, so we had bannered that about. But I went through my old records and stuff where Mr. Nyman and even the guys from LACA had said we might want to remove this the depth, and stay with the distance because it may become confusing in the future, and it obviously has. And I just want to reiterate what John said about county attorney being helpful as much as he possibly can, and Dale's been a friend to all the business members out here, and I really appreciate it. But going back and reading the statute as it is, he sent it to me. It is very confusing. I mean, it does say both things, 150 foot and 5 foot. So I would just ask the board, and I'm sure you will, just maybe remove that distance, the depth, and just make that part of the exclusion process. Because nobody really wants to build a dock longer than they have to because it's expensive. I mean, Jeff Remmer is probably a millionaire for building docks.
Build a minute.
If you want to go past hardly anybody's going to extend their dock further than they naturally have to. I mean, you've always got the crazy guy out there, but that's what the exception process is for, so that you can leave those people out. I think the 5 foot depth is just really a confusion factor that hurts everybody at the board, relationships with everybody and all the boat dock builders and the realtors out here as well. I got personally 2 deals pending on the depths as well, both of Charlie Brown's pieces. Both of his have issues where he had permit, he had permission from the Dominion before we did the shoreline management, and now they're trying to kind of fit the docks in to fit the shoreline management now. And he also has a problem with the 5-foot deck thing as well, because he's, 10 feet off the bank, it's 5 foot, so you can't get a boat in there. So, just in your wisdom, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. Again, you guys have been a big help to the community, have been the last couple of years. We just all work together really well. Attending this to this. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Kemper Weaver.
Kemper Weaver, I'm 127 Connie Lane, Bumpus, that's the Cuckoo voting district. I've been a property owner here since 1982. I was on the original committee prior to 2005. We had a committee that was an advisory committee, I suppose. This same subject came up, and the 5 foot was suggested as an ideal or a suggested depth for a usable dock. In those meetings, it was never intended to be a level that we're looking for to build a dock, but rather when we had to go beyond the desired distance or the limited distance for safety factors, this is what the dock builders were looking for usable docks. So I wanted to speak on that because I think it goes to the intent of the law, not perhaps the wording of the law. We were just an advisory committee at that time. So I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next I have is Dennis Schultz.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Dennis Schultz. I live at 544 Woody-Town Road. I'm in Jackson District. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak this evening. I'm not sure if I'm the one who started all this or if I'm just kind of getting caught up in the middle.
We've been looking for that person.
Back in 2008, I had applied for a boat dock permit. It was approved. So to give you a little background, we have a point lot that's at the mouth of the canal, and on the other side it's in the back of the cove. So we decided to put the boat dock out in the point, which is the furthest point from our house, but figured it was probably the safest spot being out of the canal and wouldn't block my neighbor's view to the left. And it was approved to go out 82 feet. When we got out there to actually construct it, we took some additional measurements, and it appeared that the back of the slip was close to the 5 foot measurement, but if you go to the front of the slip, in the middle of the slip, it was going to be less than 5 foot of water. So we had applied to extend the boat slip 7 feet, and that was back in December 2nd of last year. Dominion was kind enough to turn that paperwork back around in about 3 or 4 days. They had the approval package submitted back to the county. Plans were reviewed. The boat shelter was actually approved through the building department, and after about 2 months, they decided that the boat shelter should be denied because the actual back of the slip wasn't over 5 feet of water. And I guess as you read that code specifically, it discusses water depth, and I guess it's unclear from where that water depth gets measured from. If you look at the code, the wording states it generally should not exceed 5 feet, and it states that it's at the navigational depth. And I guess when we were discussing where that would be, why we wanted to go off 7 more feet, we assume that the boat does navigate in that boat slip, being on a lift. You need to get the front of that lift in 5 feet of water, and at that point there, we determined that we would need to get a little bit deeper water. So I guess that has kind of come up to be an issue, and we just like to hope that the board of directors and the county can work with us on this a little bit, either add some additional clarity to regulations or strike the 5 foot rule altogether. And I just want to say thank you for your time, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for your input. Is there anybody else who would like to talk about the shoreline management issue? Can we change subjects? Don't see anybody else. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question.
Please come forward. We have to be able to record it.
Teacher.
Come on and get a can.
So you gonna say you were responsible there?
Nancy Gomez, 256 William Street, in the Cooper District. And I just had a quick question with all of the information that's been brought forward. What is the next step? Is it possible that the Board of Supervisors could act on this quickly and do something sort of ad hoc? Or have you got to go through a long process and keep all these people?
On an individual issue where somebody comes and asks for a review and variance, sometimes they can be reviewed and accepted like in a 30 to 45 day period. If you're changing the codes, and this is like what I'm hearing here talking about the FIFO particularly, you got to change the ordinance, which takes 45 days up usually, because you have to run it through the planning commission with a public hearing and back to us with a public hearing. So what we'll have to decide at this point, in my opinion, is do we want to take this particular subject matter and as a board and recommend it back to the planning commission to take a look at a possible ordinance change. So,
That's something that you can decide tonight.
yeah, we can probably maybe be able to decide that tonight, but we can't take action tonight and say we're changing the ordinance. You just
Right,
can't do
but
that.
just to get the ball rolling, if something's going to happen, I just wondered what happened first, second, third.
Well, as we get to the discussion a little bit later, we'll make that decision whether we want to look at it or not. We haven't talked about that among ourselves yet. We're waiting for the input tonight, so. Okay?
My quick question. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Whichever one. Karen?
Hi, I'm Gary Griffith. I live at 333 Cook Lane, West Virginia, the Jackson District. And my only, I guess, question or comment on it is, it had been brought up, and that it does say that in the code as a legal interpretation. And Mr. Mullen was nice enough to let me come in without an appointment. He spent about a half hour kind of explaining what it says and what it says, which I really appreciated. The question I have, I guess, is when you read that entire ordinance, you have very specific language in there about depth, square foot of dock, that says exactly what you can do and how far you can go. And you have that one paragraph that it refers to the 5 foot, which is a little contradictory to everything that's specific, and it says generally should. And in this long process that we're going through, and I know a lot of people that are concerned about working, or people considering whether to buy a lot or not until this gets resolved, kind of grinding things to a halt on the shoreline of the lake. Since this ordinance has been written, they've leaned toward the specific language, and my understanding, I think that's the only time it's ever been applied, is on Dennis Schultz's situation. I mean, is it possible that you can move forward issuing permits based on the same standards that you have been using up until this time, while they review why that statement's in there and how it could have been applied?
So you want us to continue to do it wrong?
Well,
No, continue to
do you
do it
think
right.
it's been, continue doing it right would be my thought, because I don't see where that's been a problem all this time since it's been written. It seems almost more of a way to, it can be implemented to stop doing it right. It's the way it appears. But thank you.
Thank you. We'll have to add that into our discussion. Mr. Newman, you have a comment?
My name is Gene Newman, 623 Bear Castle Drive, Bumpus, Jackson District. Gary pretty much said what I wanted to say because he kind of stuck up here ahead of me. But I think it's really important that if you guys could address this right away, mainly from an economics standpoint. The agents can't, they go to sell a lot, and the guy says, can I put a boathouse on it? What are they going to say to them? So it's really holding the real estate market up also. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? The last card I have is a different subject, and with Thomas Murray. Do you want to talk now, or maybe wait to Mr. Barnes has suggested that we add an item to the, do you want him to talk?
Here's what I do for the sake of time. Mr. Mayor, I need some time with you about these cell towers, and I really don't want to add too much to the agenda tonight. I would really like to get you on our next agenda, because, and I'm not going to beat this thing to death with these people something else, but I had enough of with not having broadband in this county, and I'm at my boiling point. And nothing against you personally. I like you as a person, but the time has come in this county for broadband to be here and not wait for it. So,
Can I propose that I speak very briefly?
Yeah, go ahead. Everybody wants to hear it. We're waiting.
I'll speak as long as you want me tonight, and I'll also come back.
2 minutes would be nice, but you have
2 minutes, I can probably do that. So I'm Tam Murray. I'm a community wireless structures. I don't live in the county. I live in Alexandria, but I'm going to pass this out just as a quick guide to my comments tonight. All right, so I've just passed out our marketing flyer, and I'm here to announce that we are going to build the 76 site and the 88 site. That's, we refer to 76 as Thelma, refer to 88 as Hound Dog. Our plan is to be under construction in March. We'll probably stagger them. We'll probably do the Thelma one first, followed by the Hound Dog. CDA Link is going to be the lead tenant on each one. They'll provide broadband, Supervisor Barnes, to those areas. Understand that recently Supervisor Havasi has signed up with CDA Link, and I've heard through Brian that the service is good, and that service will come in the vicinity of these two sites. Trying to think what else I wanted to mention. Starting 2 months or so, Verizon is interested in the Thelma site. We're working with them on a lease. AT&T has expressed some interest to Jeremy Camp about the quote-unquote Boswell Taverns area. And my hope is that they would have an interest in one, if not both of these sites as well. So there's improvement coming in this part. We've built, so far, we've built 3 of the 6 sites that you permitted. The county has 46 different towers. We have 6 of them. We have 6 permits. We've built 3. We're going to build 2 more. The final permit is on 33 to the east of town. We call it Northeast Creek. It's roughly halfway between town and 522. So that's the status of the 6 sites that you guys have approved. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll be back whenever we're done.
questions.
I got one.
Now, yes, sir.
That we got a whole lot of folks sitting back here like to have some broadband up around the lake. And as I understand it, these conditional use permits, not just yours, but all of them require these be used within 6 months. If they're not used within 6 months, they come down.
Well, we built the site on that we call Butler Store on 208, and that's got AT&T on it. We built the site that we call Melton's, that's on Doctors Road, and Verizon is service on that one. Verizon has given us a lease for the Trevilian site. They've yet to put their equipment on it.
They did that, what, back in last year?
They did, and CDA Link went active there 2 months ago, something like that. So that's 3 out of the 6 permits. The 4th one is Thelma, and you all put a drop dead date of the middle of summer, and we're pedaling the bicycle hard. We're going to get that one built. And there wasn't a condition on the Hound Dog site, but we're building that one as well. So we're trying hard. I mean, I point out from the study that the county purchased a study in 2007 from Cityscape. I just reviewed it again today. It's a really thorough study. There are 46 tower sites in this county, and again, I point out that we have 6 of the 46. And just to make it known that we don't control the tower market. We don't control broadband. We're an infrastructure provider. We work hard. I mean, if I attract a tenant, I make money. I mean, it's a real simple equation. I'm doing everything I can to get tenants. And you've heard this 6 times from me before. Everybody has. This is the most popular technology in the world. 300 million Americans. And there's 300 million cell phones. And those carriers are spending money in Richmond, they're spending money in Norfolk, they're spending money in Charlottesville, they're spending money in the bigger metropolises. And they're starting, the good news is they're starting here. I mean, we've got a Verizon's interested in Thelma, And AT&T is interested in Boswell's Tavern, and that could produce service from both of them.
Thank you, sir. Well, public information, this board has gotten quite frustrated because of lack of service in the county. As you can imagine, a lot of folks talk to us about the lack of service. We've had Verizon, I think, here with us at least 2 times, maybe 3 times.
5, 6.
And basically, they talk nice, but we seem to get nowhere. And I think a lot of it comes down to they have to have numbers for profit. And but regardless of that, we're continuing trying to find sources to stir up needs in this county. As we know, there's some places in the state that seems to be more stimulus money going for this matter, and we're getting zero here. So we're going to shake that a little bit more. But just for your information, this board seriously wants the broadband coverage because we know how important it is to industry, education, and on and on. So just a general comment for you. Mr. Newman, you've got 2 more minutes left on your 3. If you want to say something, you raise your hand.
Don't sit on those towers.
Thank you very much. Just a simple question. Sure. Sir, when you say Thelma, is that Thelma Road, or what are the actual locations of
It's the western part of the county.
Oh, it is the Albemarle line.
Northwestern part of the county.
Greensboro.
It's Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We need to move on, fellas. We got public.
No, I get a comment.
I am too.
To this
You have one. Go ahead.
Since I've been here, I've had dial-up, I've had Wild Blue, I've had Verizon Wireless. I can't say anything nice about any of them. Poor service, poor reliability, but so far, for 2 weeks, CVA link has been great, and it's pretty fast. I would highly recommend it.
Yes, sir. Real quick, as I've been talking with CVA Link and talking with Bob Hardy, our IT man, and the idea is that if we put up towers across this state, across this county, we could do it for around $650,000 and put a vendor like CVA Link on these towers and gain our money back within 10 years' time. So I just want people to know that we are doing something and we're heading that direction. And I feel bad having DSL 2 miles out of Louisa, and I think y'all need it out there too. But that's the game plan. That's what we're looking at right now. Thank you.
I'm sure we're just as frustrated as you are. Any other comments? If not, I'll close. Okay, 3 minutes.
Didn't John Carroll speak for him?
I thought John Carroll was here. Weren't you late?
John already talked.
And I'll try to reiterate that stuff he said. Jeff Remmers, 562 Moodytown Road, Jackson District. Just felt like a dock builder should at least come up here and kind of share some of my thoughts, as far as water decks go. John mentioned that 97% of the docks that he's done site plans for in the last year wouldn't meet the 5-foot requirement. And I think you can talk to any of the other dock builders here. Maybe it's not 97, maybe it's 95, maybe it's 90%, but it's 9 out of 10 docks go past the 5-foot deck. So if you're going to go ahead and wait the 30 to 45 days to see how many exceptions come in, I think we're wasting 30 to 45 days because we know 90% of the docks are already falling underneath that. So, and I wanted to also bring up a point about Dominion. I think that is taken too lightly. Dominion, in Spotsylvania and Orange County, they're the only approving authority. And of course, there's problems, but they work through them and approve them. Sometimes not approve them based on the situation.
Public hearings.
But, so I wanted to point that out too, that even if you do strike the language, there's still another body. Everybody's not going to be building docks to 150 feet. And then the last thing, I don't know if the county attorney can, tell us if there's any rules that you can just go ahead and strike the language, or if that's impossible, we have to go through the whole board.
It's got to go through public hearing to change the ordinance. The ordinance is a code, and seriously, although we may want to do some of those things tonight, legally we cannot. So we can, hopefully, I do have on the agenda the new business, item 5A, that will follow up the discussion here. Now, that may take, it may be an hour from now, because we've got some other things before that, but we should be talking about it a little bit later. Ms. Mullins, do you have anything to add on this issue at all at this point?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the public citizen information period. We have a public hearing scheduled for 7 o'clock. It's after 7. We have a public hearing on a resolution authorizing the transfer of property to Virginia Department of Transportation. Mr. Mullins, you're going to present that real quick. Page 150.
This is on page 115. This is the last portion of a property transfer to complete the improvements to the road 208 relative to Moss Knuckles Elementary School.
Take a 5-minute break.
Pork chops are getting cold.
We gotta be upstairs about 7:50.
Well, this has got to be done. Oh, just make a motion, get, after you get the public hearing, and we'll go.
Yeah, we will.
But not
That's the plan. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I also wanted to remind the chairman that the fluoride presentation individuals here.
I know, but he's already late.
That's right. But this is the last step of finalizing the property transfers relative to the improvement of 208 in front of Moss Knuckles Elementary School, Mr. Chair.
I'll open the public hearing. Any comments? Not seeing any, I'll close public hearing. Bring it back.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Barnes, second by Mrs. Spence. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0 absent. When Mr. Barnes is absent.
Where's he off to?
Mr. Jackson, how long will your presentation take?
Very brief.
Let's go ahead and take your presentation. I'm sorry, we have to skip over you because a few minutes late, you saw we had a lot of folks here, so go ahead. We have to be somewhere at 7:15, so.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, on behalf of my wife and I, Emily and Lawrence Jackson, we come before you from 8603 Poindexter Road, Patrick Henry District. Our purpose here is to give you just a brief information, a bit of information on our foundation. We are a 501c3 foundation, and we are here to talk about the lack of dental care for young people in the county. Our organization was founded in 2006. We are a 501c3, and we're trying to do things in the county. Our goal is to bring about better dental care. We all know that dental care starts with proper nutrition, followed by hygiene. And one of the things that's lacking in the county is the parental push of making sure that this is taken care of. We're here tonight to ask that you continue to support us in the way that you have, and nothing more. And how we do this is we're going to start by following up with the superintendent of schools, and we're going to take on the responsibility of the swish and spit program in the school system. We are going to make every effort out of what you have contributed, which no way am I trying to demean that amount, but it will only make a small surface scratch for what we are striving to do. We are striving to reach every child in the school system. And sometimes we look at the possibility of approaching it from the standpoint of the reduced lunch program. We will take that in consideration, but if at all possible, through the efforts of people like Dr. Perlman, who came on board immediately as a partner when we asked him, and then the corporate office of Walgreens has given us a voucher which will actually give us a period of 30 days to pay our bills, meaning one of our clients that we're taking care of, their problems, will be able to take the prescription to Walgreens and with the proper signature on it, just hand it to their prescription and walk out. We're not going to tell you that out of our pockets alone, we're going to be able to accomplish this goal. But we do have people that have stepped up already and made a pledge to us. And we're very pleased that the first one was Montana Tractor up on Michigan came up with a generous offering. And we're looking for additional help because if any of you have children in the county and you recognize that child speaks to you and covers the mouth, and then that child grows into an adult and it continues. So we are going to try to make youngsters leave the problem of the worst pain that a person could have is a dental problem. There's nothing. A broken leg only hurts for a little while, but the tooth will keep coming back. So in closing, we're going to continue to do what we can do for the county, the children, and I might say for the adults, because senior citizens have a need for fluoride, because as it comes up around the gums, the saliva keeps the jawbone strong. It will not fracture quite as easily. We're going to go beyond just the fluoride treatment. We're going to have exams and follow-up, and if after Dr. Perlman evaluates it, if he feels that the varnish is the best route to go, he's given us a tremendous figure that he will do this service for us. So, in closing, please keep things at the status quo. And I'm asking you to do nothing tonight but realize that the good doctor of your school system appear to be enthusiastic about our efforts. And if there are questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Thank you, sir. I think we all here appreciate your efforts. And, we are getting into the budget time, so you're not getting a lot of money from us, but we're always open for requests. We can say no, obviously. As you get into a little bit deeper, you want to sell us on more, then come and talk to us again.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to some of these folks here tonight that have smiles on his face saying, I can't believe that a citizen right out of the audience is going to step up. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to step up and do for the county. We're looking for partners to come on board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate all y'all do. Thanks so much, Dave.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jackson, have you submitted that request to the county administrator for this year?
Not for this year.
You need to do that.
Gentlemen, let's recess.
One other question, Mr. Jackson. What was our contribution last year, and what is the total cost of your program?
Oh, the last time was 3 years ago that we got something from the board. That was $2,500. The dollar amount by the district or region 10 was $75,000. We hope to, out of pocket as well as donations and grants, to reach this. But we'll fall far short. But there is one factor. That is that many of the parents are not taking advantage of the fluoride. And hopefully, with the governor reporting the surplus money, that the money will be put back into the budget for the program.
Don't hold your breath on that one.
Well, I would be there.
Thank you. Thanks again. Really appreciate it. We need to recess until 7:45, and we'll come back and start off with item 4 on the old business. Item 4 on the old business.
I sent Jane the shelter. What are you going to tell them? I told her Dan needs. I see Dan at work. Dan needs to
A resolution adopting a pre-treatment program ordinance for Louisa County. Mr. Mullin.
I'll go around that. I did. And move on.
No, hang on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, is this something we have to see? Can we take action without seeing it?
I do want to make it clear, though, there were 2 minor changes to address the town of Louisa's comments. The first was to section 1.2. This has been cleared by DEQ. And what it clarifies is that the town of Louisa owns and operates the collection and conveyance system within the boundaries of the town of Louisa while jointly owning the publicly owned treatment water. Conveyance of customer sewage does not qualify them as a user. That's one change that was made at the request of the town of Louisa. The second change was made to section 1.4, specifically setting out by ordinance that in the case of the town of Louisa, those duties of enforcement can be delegated within the boundaries of the town of Louisa while jointly owning the publicly owned treatment works as may be set forth by the interjurisdictional agreement. The interjurisdictional agreement does not yet exist. DEQ wants one with the town of Louisa as well as the town of Mineral, but the interjurisdictional agreement is penned to the sewer use ordinance, and so until we enact the sewer use ordinance, we can't negotiate the interjurisdictional agreement, although I will say there's already a framework for it. Those are the only 2 changes, and all that remains now is for the Board of Supervisors to act to adopt that ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barnes, second by Mr. Barnes. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next, 4 draft amendments being considered by the planning commission. It's on page 5. It gives you the items and Mr. Camp, I'm assuming that you want us to say go for it kind of ordeal. Is that what we're looking for?
I have been trying to get in the routine on all of these to bring them forward to you ahead of time. Give you a chance to have a copy of it and comment if you have any comments. These are all things that the Planning Commission is currently working on. They haven't scheduled a public hearing or anything, but we've kind of reached a stage where we've had a consensus on the language for the most part, and they're planning on moving forward on these. The first one has to do with the derelict watercraft. That was something that came from the Board of Supervisors.
You going to say my name? You going to say my name?
Okay, Mr. Barnes actually sponsored that request. And housekeeping, that's probably come up with another title there, but that represents, I guess, a number of legal changes that were initiated by the county attorney.
Is derelict the best term we can have for that?
In education it is.
Just a question, a lot of folk, if we develop those to be easily understood and read, sometimes it may be a different term. Thank you.
I had one question on that, under the derelict watercraft definition as well, where it says, or otherwise has not been navigated on the water body for 12 months. Well, if somebody
Wait a minute. Oh, that's my boat.
That's my boat, too. If somebody has a boat that's been stored in the yard, hasn't been on the water, does that qualify that as a derelict?
It wouldn't be a violation unless it was visible from a public road, the way it's drafted. I suppose,
What are these people gonna do with these
it would meet
boats?
the definition.
People could have glasses of vision.
Are we going to take the boats to landfill? They're fiberglass. You don't crush them up to something, young man. How are we going to dispose of them?
We would look to the owner to dispose of them.
It's a landfill or what?
That's one method. If it's junk,
The biggest problem is that you should take some of these boats and try to hide them behind the house or something, but they leave them right out in the front yard with trash bags.
That's just down Patch Henry.
In front of them.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mills.
I have a question. On the derelict watercraft, does this mean I can't buy a wooden boat and refurbish it? At my age, it might take 5 years. If I did that. There's no clause in here for people who are restoring or in some sort of private restoration instead of a public launching area or marina.
no, there's not. It just specifies it at 12 months, and if one a junk boat, or if it's any other boat that hasn't been operated for 12 months, and
But you will make exceptions if somebody's in a restoration project.
Did we have an extra time?
it's got to be. It says in a state of disrepair.
That's a restoration project.
It doesn't seem like it fits.
Are we going to enforce this, or is this going to be one of these complaint-based deals?
I got one we can start enforcing right away, Mr. Mills.
I just want to make sure that's what we're doing, is that, because I don't want to get in this complaint-based thing again. I don't want to see somebody riding by 17 boats to go jump on somebody's case for having one.
It fits. They knew.
And Mr. Chairman, the other thing is that I'm sure that Planning Commission will look at it, but it ought to make sure that it's clear and easily understood so we don't have the same issue we're talking about now with docks. And the other piece is visible, cable being seen without visual aid, person wearing glasses, I think they're termed as visual aids. I don't know. Contacts or whatever.
As far as abandoned vehicles, don't we have a special clause in there if somebody is restoring when they're some extra time?
Well,
I know we talked about it.
Don't confuse it with the inoperable vehicle.
I know, but I'm just saying, when they're The issue there where if you had a car that you were remodeling or repairing or storing or whatever, that it wasn't tied down to the normal, get it out of here now.
I don't think this would be either. I mean, it only talks about, deteriorated, rotten, damaged, dismantled, or otherwise in a state of disrepair type of boats under the definition.
Well, you're hearing what we're concerned about, so, you think about that as...
Mr. Chairman, but also in all fairness to Jeremy too, I understand what Mr. Harrison, you just brought up, but if somebody's in that business, they should have a CUP or a reputable business. No, I'm saying it's a difference between a private person restoring a boat than it is having 13, 14 boats there and somebody claims that they're doing that. It's a big difference. If you got 13, 14 boats and you're doing that, you've now transformed into a business. So then it's a whole different stipulation. So there's a difference in that.
Maybe they need to look at that as well.
I'm not hearing anybody disagree with coming up with something, just the actual wording that we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Ms. Spencer had first.
I think we need to take care of our own roads before we worry about what's on somebody's private property. We got so much filth and trash out here, I believe we need to take a look at that.
Jeremy, I have a problem with the junkyard description here.
Yes, sir.
Really, the way this is written, if somebody's garbage can tips over, you can have code enforcement out there. I mean, this is so broad.
Which one?
And I'm not sure the county should be in some of this business interfering with people's private life. I know we want all our neighborhoods to look as nice as possible, but sometimes individual rights overrule, especially if it's their property.
There is a range, I guess, of interpretation in the language. It's not.
Okay.
It doesn't pinpoint. It'd be very difficult to pinpoint every piece of thing that some people might consider junk. But what we added was the discarded equipment and household items, parts of vehicles, and pieces of watercraft. Because if we were trying to regulate boats, there would be instances where you might have a half a boat, and based on experience on the inoperable vehicle ordinance, they would claim that it doesn't apply to them. And this way, it got also be enforced to the junkyard.
And Mr. Harrison, and I certainly share rights of private citizens, and I won't beat this to death, but I would invite any board member to go with me on Nanny Burton Road, the intersection 604 Nanny Burton Road, where the guy got, how many boats, Jeremy?
I never counted them, but a handful, a couple handfuls.
And when the sheriff's department go up there and you pretty much, just blow them off. And the neighbors, and I can understand, if you all see what I'm talking about, and Dick, some areas too where we got the same problem. I think the public did a great job, because we did a good job of educating about the junk car ordinance. We don't hear about that anymore now, except for with a complaint by. But I'll be honest, I didn't have him just to draft this. There is a need for boats, because boats does not come under that.
Mr. Barnes talked about junk vehicles. The price of metal helped junk vehicles more than any ordinance ever had.
You're right.
We can't sell these.
Well, what I'm looking for the board is to send a message to Jeremy that, yes, go ahead with these items of planning commission. He'll come back to us at some point.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Barnes, second by Mr. Hassan. Further discussion?
I would just like that derelict watercraft definition looked at a little harder. I think a boat that just hadn't been put in the water over 12 months, that needs to be looked at. If it's in disrepair, that's one thing, but if it's okay and just hadn't been navigated for 12 months, then I think that'd get a little too restricted.
My boat has electric motor I put on it, so to say that it doesn't have a motor on it's in violation.
Get on this board and you don't have time to use it.
That's the crack, man. That's why we hadn't been over that lake.
Mr. Chairman, I just suggest that to be real careful, because once we put an ordinance out there, then we have to be able to live with it, or the outfall of it, and we want to be careful. I don't think we can overemphasize that.
That's why we're sitting where we're at tonight.
All All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I can honestly tell you that the planning commission, as they've been going through their work sessions and discussions, they've had some of the same questions.
And Jeremy, take some pictures and show them what we're talking about next time they meet, okay? Please? Thank you.
Next item is 5A, and that was the shoreline ordinance that we're dealing with. I think we should have a couple minutes to talk about that. Dale, what I've heard from most of the people this afternoon was a concern about the 5 feet. And I take it that we cannot just arbitrarily say, okay, we're going to ignore the 5 feet or whatever until we actually change it. Is that correct?
That's correct. You could not instruct me to arbitrarily ignore any provision of existing code.
Regardless of whether it's been ignored up to this point or not, no, we just can't arbitrarily.
And here's the troublesome part. And even those who spoke against my interpretation have had one difficult time getting around this provision that says the length of a structure should generally, now that's somewhat vague, but not vague enough to ignore it, should generally only be enough to reach a navigable depth. And then it even spells out, I did not put that in there, that's actually in the code, 5 feet at the normal pool level. And it even gives the reason why. In order to minimize the structure's projection into the water. Now that particular provision is set out at the very beginning of the entire code. There are 3 subsections for agricultural, residential, commercial and common area uses and resort development. But what it says specifically, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the board, structures shall, and then under statutory language, that's mandatory, shall meet the following maximum lengths unless otherwise approved by the Planning Commission. Very specific. Then it says the length of a structure should generally only be enough to reach a navigable depth 5 feet at the normal pool level. Now, under the rules of statutory construction, and specifically under a Virginia case, you've got to be able to give full meaning to all of the words such that the statute makes sense. There's no way to read that does not indicate that 5 foot depth is to be given meaning depending on where one would measure the normal. We know where the normal pool level is measured. That's measured at the outfall. We use the same area that
it's a 250 to 51.5 is what it is.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, I remember discussing that when we had our presentation that came from the committee. And where we missed, so I think, is really spelling out more what happens along the immediate shore where you have property and you got 5 feet starts at that point. That was specific for where you had at the mouth of the cove where you might want to go out into the channel kind of thing.
Sure.
And we said, no way, we can allow 175, 200 feet to go at that point. Let's stop it at the 5 foot. That was discussion. I know it is what it is there, but we never really did talk, unless I had a light. I don't remember ever talking about specifically in the cove itself where you had 5 foot at a point of your property and that you could not put a pier there. And it's not addressed obviously there. So if there's something lacking, I think we should address that issue regardless of which way we go. We need to address that issue.
And this board always struggles with the idea that language is an imperfect method of communicating what exactly is supposed to happen in rapidly and ever-changing situations. I will say, in fairness to the situation, there is another end of the spectrum that other supervisors and professional staff and I have heard that indicate that they do want this strictly adhered to. The one thing that I do find generally in common is all of the piers and the docks that are thought to be too long usually belong to somebody else, and all of the piers and docks that are usually thought to be exactly the right length are the ones of the people I'm talking to. I've never had someone call me out to the property and say, I'd like you to see my dock, it's entirely too long. Or I'd like you to look at my neighbor's dock, it's entirely too short. Oftentimes there's a subjective aspect. That's why we've got to get the objective piece right, so that when Mr. Camp and his staff have to judge something, the subjectiveness is taken out of it. Now, is the best way to address that to send it back to the Planning Commission? Perhaps, if you'd like to send it back to them with suggested revisions, just like we've done here.
Do we have to?
You don't have to.
go to the...
You do not have to, sir.
Because time seems to be of the essence. We have some folks that want to get this resolved as soon as possible. I don't know what the board's going to say as far as even looking at the 5 feet, but I think the fact it's all been put out on the table now, we're going to hear quite a few review requests for that item.
Sure.
So that maybe that's dictating that, in fact, we need to look at the ordinance and see if a couple words can be added or subtracted, whatever, to comply with what we think is reasonable. That's what I'm thinking. We can hear the rest of the board.
The hard part is this for the board. You have to be able to ascertain the majority will. What do you want your shoreline to look like generally? So once I know what that is, I can tell you exactly what the right words would be.
Well, my
to arrive at
concern
that
is, I
result.
think in most cases, it's probably been done pretty well. But if I put $500,000 on a piece of property and $1 million on a house, and the county's telling me I can have at least a 20-foot pier or something, I think I'd be a little bit upset.
Some have suggested that A through C were meant to be the predominant features, and as I think it was Mr. Blunt who articulated, and he was on the committee, so he may know, though it doesn't say that. Beyond that, if you couldn't reach the normal pool level for navigability, beyond that, you were supposed to only extend it as far as you could get to reach 5 feet.
Yes.
I do understand what he's saying, but that really does take this and flip it backwards.
When,
Again, I was on the committee, Ms. Spencer was as well, and there wasn't a lot of discussion other than saying, hey, we're not going to allow 200 or 175 feet to go out into the channel or in a safety issue. Let's pick the 5 foot wherever it hits, and that's where we set it off. That was the total discussion. But again, it was never talked about from the inside the code where you had a 5 foot right at your property line.
And Mr. Schultz was kind enough to come up here this evening and say himself, I would not have said this had he not made his own comments. But his structure really did bring about the question, too, as a general matter, from where do you measure? Do you measure from the very tip end at the very deepest part, or do you take a series of measurements that run all the way back to the closest end portion of the slip?
Well, the 5 foot was taken as the depth that you needed to have to negotiate a boat. So if where his pier stops, he's got 5 foot in one corner, not the other corner, he can't navigate. I think through common sense, he would extend it.
You know what, but that does put staff in the position of having to go out there with a sounding tape and then make their own individual determination about where should a citizen be able to navigate their boat.
Well, it's in the code. We got to use that 5 feet somewhere.
Yeah.
Some folks are taking 5 feet out altogether.
Some advocate that approach.
I know when I was on the planning commission, we went through all this stuff. The lengths of the 150 feet in the agricultural section and 200 feet, those were maximum. Even if you haven't gotten to the 5 feet, you don't go beyond those anyway. The 5 foot was just like it's written in here in the ordinance. You get to go out until you reach that 5 foot navigable depth. And if you reach that, you don't go up 150 or 200. And one of the things we didn't address those issues where you have 5 foot right at the shoreline, but I think you could just add some verbiage in here. Of course, it'd have to go back to the planning commission and stuff, but if you left the rest of it in and simply added to this, length of structure should generally only be enough to reach a navigable 5 foot at normal pool, and in no case extend beyond 30 feet, extend more than 30 feet beyond a point at which the 5 foot depth is met. That would allow you to have to pull your boat in, and that would put the 5 foot at the front of that depth and something like that. But that would give you 30 feet to work in, but it would also keep you from going out 150 feet and be in 15 feet or more.
So you're saying go 30 feet out?
Well, that would put the 5 feet sort of at the beginning. It would allow you to bring the front of your boat in, but you've reached that 5 foot of depth, and just add that verbiage or something similar to that right in the same sentence. In no case extend And in no case extend more than 30 feet beyond the point at which the 5-foot depth is met. And then you would have 5 foot at least for that 30 foot. And they were telling us you didn't need but, I forgot what it was. One of the things in here said that they had to have 16 to 20 feet from the end of the pier or something low. I mean, to get into the lift.
So the one I got said that the dock would extend 15 to 20 feet beyond the rear of the lift.
Right. Well, you could have, what I'm saying is, if you had 5 foot up close to the shore, that would give you 30 feet. Bring your boat in, get on the left, and it would be merely changing this one sentence.
It would.
Well, that's what I'm thinking too. Maybe I didn't express myself like that good, but so what we're saying, if we want to go in the direction Mr. Barlow's talking, we can simply send it back to you and Mr. Camp to change the wording, come right back to the board at a public hearing to make the change. Is that what we're talking about? It doesn't necessarily have to go back to planning commission.
Pretty sure the state code says the planning commission has to review anything in the zoning ordinance.
Yep.
It should go back to.
They have a meeting March 10th.
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
Dale. Generally, I feed my dog at 5 o'clock in the evening. Okay. Does that mean that I still feed him if I feed him at 6 o'clock, but generally I do it at 5? I think the way this is written allows exactly what Tommy and our chairman have expressed, that generally you have a general rule, but it's not absolute. And that when I read that, there's variance generally is not a conclusive word that you can hang your hat on and say we can't go any further, because you're saying generally you feed your dog at 5 o'clock, but it means you could feed him at 6 too, and it would still be a feeding.
Well, I will say though, I get your point, Mr. Havasi, and with all due respect, I would say that under Mr. Barlow's suggested fix, I don't see any common sense way that I could regularly say that a structure could go beyond 5 feet by 30 feet on a routine basis and still say that I'm advising you to stay within the bounds of the code. I do not think that extending 30 feet beyond 5 feet is in any way meeting the spirit or the letter of what this law says.
Once you establish the 5 feet, the 30 feet's not easy to mark off?
I don't think. Sure. Yes, sir.
That problem would be
Who's going to do it?
the 5 feet.
No, I think it can be, but I just think that regularly going beyond 30 feet, past 5 feet, violates what this law is meant to achieve. And I go back some to the legislative history, and I see specific suggestion in the records. Though this is not, the law means what it says, but it is instructive to note that there was specific discussion that was held that an ordinance needed to be enacted that allowed a homeowner to build a pier only as long as necessary to reach 5 feet to a maximum of 150 feet. So
I still think it needs to go back to the planning commission, but what I was thinking about, if you added that wording in there, it would still allow that, it would put the 5 foot at the front.
yes.
And that would be, you think that would take care of this problem?
I think it would be more restrictive than what A, B, and C allow for now, but I do think it would adequately address the problem.
Well, if you still had the A, B, and C in there, I don't know, it's one of those things, you need to think about it to make sure we get it right this time.
Can we simply say that if your property at the shoreline is 5 feet or more, then you're allowed up to X number of feet of pier?
I'm interested.
It would be virtually a guarantee of a 30-foot pier, or a guarantee of a pier that extends 30 feet beyond a 5 foot at normal pool. That's what a homeowner would be guaranteed under the code, as Mr. Barlow suggests.
Well, I don't have a lot
Thank you. Calls I have received is, of course, one side wants to be able to put piers anywhere they want to put them, and the county stay out of it. In other words, we end up with the whole lake surface covered with salt-treated timber. But I got the same question that the rest of y'all did about, if you got a guy that's got 5 feet of water at his water at the edge, then he can't have a dock. And so I would have no problem with going at 30 feet from the shoreline. And that would answer that question. But as far as dropping the depth level, we went through all that with Virginia Institute of Marine Science, everything else come up to that 5 feet. And I remember here a few years ago, we had the drought, and people were calling, wondering what the county was going to do because their boat was sitting up in the mud by itself, and the lower unit was all the way under the mud. I said, we don't take care of stupid. That if the water's going down, you take your boat out of the water. If it's going down, you let your lower unit up. But, somewhere along the line, somebody has got to take responsibility. But I've got no problem going up 30 feet, period.
Mr. Harper, you have a comment?
Yes, I did. It is, I guess,
Mr. Harper has a comment.
I guess it's puzzling how we want to be so limiting in some aspects of government and non-limiting in other aspects of government. We just pick and choose where it is we want to be limiting, if you will. I think it's very clear here that the 5-foot criteria alone is not suitable for determining the length of a dock. And I think there has to be some consideration given to the differentiation between commercial and private. And I don't see why if we're going to write the thing, hell, why send it back? Send it back with the goal we want to accomplish and let them reason it out and bring it back to us. We can always make changes to it and so forth. I just don't see the need of a whole lot of discussion here at this point because I think it's pretty obvious what our problems are and what we need to do to fix them.
Well, I was trying to give Mr. Mullins and Mr. Camp all of our ideas. So, in fact, they're the note keepers.
Well, they are, but you also have your rep on the planning commission you can work with.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, a number of the people that spoke this evening was in the Jackson District, and I think a number of the calls I got that was concerned about the 5 foot, whether it was general or whatever, because it said that the lake level varies some from what we say is down 18 inches, whatever, that varies some, and there were some that said they wanted, for diving and so forth. So I don't think the only issue was when you got to the 5 foot point. I think there were some other people who said, why can't we go on further than that if we want to be able to dive off it if we don't get too far out in the lake? And I think that's that has to be, if we want to take into consideration what the public has said, that was part of what was said.
Well, the problem I have with that part of it, Mr. Byers, I thought about it as well, is that if you define the 5 foot from the normal pool level, now in the past the normal pool level has been the design level of the lake of 250, 251.5. I think you go back in the last 10 years and see what the level of the lake has been because of about 3 droughts. That probably the normal pool level, not the design pool level, but the normal exact pool level there is probably less than 5.
It's generally 18 inches lower.
So if you're going to compensate for that, then that 5 needs to change into 6.5 or something. But that is a concern.
Why do we, if we want to look at the length of the dock, why do we even concern ourselves with the 5 foot? But these are all things I think that
Chris Tarver, like I said, that's why we talked about the 5 foot. The only time we talked about it was if it's going out there too far, we won't be able to cut them off at the 5 foot.
I understand what all that discussion.
That's the way it got in the conversation. The only way it got in the conversation.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So here's some concerns I got. We may get snow tomorrow sometime early because I'm on side with Mr. Harper on this particular subject.
We need to redline that.
But here's my concerns, and my first and foremost concern is safety, and I understand the board's concerned with that. But I am concerned about the board making such a big delay in the decision process that can cost some people their livelihood. What I mean by their livelihood, we all know we're in a tough economy, and it's picking up a little bit, and people start to see some work. And I certainly don't want to see somebody have to lay a crew off for a month
waiting for us to come up with a decision. I certainly don't want that. Also, I can tell you, like my daughter used to say when she was 6 years old, she would tell me, "Dad, make a law so we could do such. And I said, "Baby, it don't work that way." She said, "Why not? Ain't you the board supervisor? And don't you make laws?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But it don't work that way." She said, "Well, you can do it." So what I say to you this is that until Mr. Schultz had his application in December, I had not had anybody call about the process that was in place, to my knowledge. So sometimes we create sometimes more than what we shoot for here. I think this is that case. I asked this board, whatever our intent is, that we got several options we can do. We can ask our staff. We can make some verbiage change and whatever in our staff, or we can have a joint meeting with the planning commission and solve it quicker, so that these citizens can. First of all, it affects the realtors, because some contracts are going to be pending based on bill of dock. It's going to affect some of our local banks who've got some people potential looking to borrow money, and some of our local businesses that sell products to these people that do that. So I ask that whatever decision we make tonight, that we do think about how we can do it in a timely fashion.
Well, I would simply respond to that by saying, and Mr. Harper hit on this as well, I'm liaison for the planning commission. If you tell me tonight what you want, we've got a planning commission meeting this Thursday, right? I'll bring it up this Thursday. We'll move. That's as quick as we can move on.
Mr. Chairman, why can't we, in follow to what Mr. Barnes said, why can't we agree to have, you can tell the planning commission we have a joint work session with them, get it so we have one public hearing, then move on. And one point of clarity, I must say that the staff didn't go out and ferret out this information. This came as a result of Mr. Schultz applying. Mr. Schultz had a fallacy in his application, which brought this to the forefront, and then there were other citizens that had input to bring it to where it is now. It wasn't Mr. Camp going out fishing for this item, and yeah. But
Mr. Wallace, can we cut it down to one public hearing with a joint meeting with the? We have I just hear. I'm
I
here.
think there's an option in the state code that allows for that. It's not common, but
we've done it before. We've done it before.
Yeah, we did it one time. I know. I just want to know. The concern here is time.
I will set out a time frame tonight to give us the quickest look possible. If you give me the word tonight to refer it back to the Planning Commission with the view of having it fixed as quickly as the Virginia Code will allow.
I mean, again, we're having a meeting Thursday. If I know what this board wants, I can present it.
That's what we need to do. I mean, that's
present it to the planning
certainly.
commission. I'm sure they'll write off on it, and then the next step will be the public hearing, right?
Yes, sir.
If the planning commission votes to accept what we're proposing, next step will go to the joint public hearing. But I need to know.
That's right.
I need to know what you want me to present to the planning.
So moved, Mr. Gentry. Let's get this going. We're moving to Senate Planning Commission.
Mr. Spencer, I want to go beyond. I need to know exactly what we're going to do. I don't want to send it to the planning commission. Planning commission will come back to us and we send. I want to know exactly at this point what we're going to send to them and move forward with that agenda.
I think Mr. Barlow stated it, at least inside.
That's just something for them to look at if they had come up with a better idea.
And that there's a minimum on depths that are 5 foot or over at the shoreline, that they can have a minimum, or
30
at
foot,
least
35
a
foot.
35 foot dock.
That's the only change I'm willing to go with.
You understand what?
Yeah, I know exactly what.
I'll talk to my planning commission member, and I'll let him know what
I will too.
Mr. Chairman, I still think we're bypassing what we need to do. The planning commission they got a work session this week. I know we can't meet that quick because of a time.
We have a advertised public hearing, Mr. Barnes.
Right, but we have to do at least 15 days. Is that right? So at least in 15 days, we can have a joint meeting in 15 days between both groups. So that gives us 15 days to advertise that we're going to have a joint meeting between both bodies.
Well, it's 2 consecutive weeks prior to the meeting, and then there's also some other time conditions. I think the earliest we could probably get it in would be if we went on a normal meeting date, it would be March 10th.
Oh, no, they're not going to work.
It have to work, Mr. Barnes. Got to go by the
What's the
law.
purpose of joint meeting if we just tell the planning commission what we want?
How it should work out here.
We got to look to see how many public hearings you got to have.
Well, and I'd also rather have their input. I don't want to tell them what to do.
Right.
I'd rather them come back with some ideas.
I agree with Mr. Hop on that.
My concern, though, like I said before, is the timeline.
You got to do it legal, Mr. Barnes.
I'm not saying not to do it legal, Mr. Phillips, but I'm saying the timeline is my main concern with this whole process. That's my main concern.
Well, okay, if everybody wants to go back to their planning commission and tell them what you want, then they're going to be just as confused as we are, because you may have 7 different ideas.
What's your options?
Because they're going to lean on each one of us to tell them what we want. And it may not be as simple as you think.
I think by definition, the planning commission, we're not supposed to tell them what we want.
Or when.
But you go up
But we can tell them when.
If you go up and talk to them, guess what, how they going to take it?
What is the option?
I think we decide what we want to.
Mr. Chairman, can I refer to the county attorney and ask him, what can we direct you to do from an interpretation standpoint until we can get something done? I just don't want to see people hanging out there. Mr. Muller, is there anything we can do from an interpretation standpoint until we can get this thing clear? I'm just trying to find out.
What's the definition generally?
I've thought about this. Yeah, I've thought about this for a couple weeks now. I don't have a good fix for something you could direct me to do. If I did, if I think of something in the meantime, I will. I think you can either follow the law or change the law. That's how I feel a little penned in.
And Mr. Chairman, may I direct a question to the county attorney? Is there can you define for us what options we have under the statutes that deals with the planning commission and so forth?
How quickly you can get it there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Camp is saying, absent some pretty I'm trying to think of the right word. I won't be able to do it, so I'll just say I think that the quickest we can get it through the regular process would be to have it back before the board for amendment on, Jeremy?
Without the joint meeting?
Yeah.
April. Well, March 10th, planning commission. Sometimes we run the ads.
You got law. The law should have been enforced all along.
Probably March 21st.
March 21st under the normal process. Extraordinary was the word I was looking for. If I can find some extraordinary remedy to amend this outside of that process, I'll let you know as quickly as I know. But aside from that, I don't have a quicker answer for you right now.
Mr. Mullins, can I ask Mr. Mullins another question? You know, I was on the planning commission for a long time, and one of the things that we found out that words do mean things. And to interpret it the way you are interpreting, that word should be shall. That defines what you are telling me. If you meant that it could have no exceptions, you would have put the word shall there. But you said should generally. So that means there are going to be exceptions to the rules. But generally, this is what we're looking for.
That is true. I will say, though, on the 2 cases before me, the 2 cases that I reviewed, in one instance, that pier extends well beyond the 5-foot navigability.
It should.
Well beyond.
Well, just two points. First of all, I don't think our discussions and actions should be limited to those 2, and they shouldn't be guiding what we're doing. But if we're going to tell the planning commission what to do, why don't we pass emergency legislation and move ahead?
I'm for that.
I'm not in favor of that. I'm just saying, if you want to do that, why not do that? If you're going to tell them what to do.
I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Harper. If you're gonna send it back to them, let them look at it. And that's what they're there for. We might as well not have them if we want to tell them exactly what.
Now, I will tell you this, though. I mean, I had, I got people talking from each direction, and I grasped the seriousness of it, but one of the ideas that was proposed by the business community is that general navigability depth should be measured from the innermost or the front portion of the slip or the pier, because that's where navigability is. I will tell you, if that was the question that I had in front of me, my answer would be different because of that word generally. This is not what I've been asked to look at. What I was asked to look at in one instance was a complex of piers, all extending well beyond, twice beyond, the 5-foot pool limit. That was one instance. We didn't have to make a ruling on it. And in the second one, it was a single pier with multiple slips that extended well beyond. So if I were presented something like this to put the business community's mind at ease, I won't tell you how I would decide, because I don't think that that's fair, but I will say if this is what I was looking at, where the front of the slip was 5 foot, but the rest of the slip generally extended a little bit past, that's what generally means. This is not what I was asked to look at and offer an opinion on, though.
And this is what PT and Tommy both recommended, and I'd be more than willing to go along with that, because I think that falls under the generally.
This is what I find somewhat puzzling, the idea that it's putting people out of work already. I don't have any plans to review or offer an opinion on. And if we're not saying no to something right now, I fail to see how that stops a particular project. I don't understand that. I'll be happy to speak to the business community privately. We can't do it here. But I dispute that that's true, because I looked at two specific instances, both of which are not general extensions. They are.
When I hear a series of piers going out way beyond, I think that's the zoning administrator should be able to make a ruling on that and say no. But I think when you're talking about just adding 30 feet for a boat to have that 5 feet in the front, because I tell you what, anybody who's been on that lake has lost a prop at one time or another during drought season, and so 5 feet could wind up being a foot in some of the bad years we've had at the front. And I think if we're going to have a recreational lake out there and try and control it, we should make it so it's safe for boaters also to be able to store their boats.
And I think certainly, just like this board has to address the issues before it and try not to go much further, I have to do the very same thing. And I've not offered a general opinion about what I would do in other cases, except to say that I take generally to give me some reasonable amount of latitude in conjunction with the zoning administrator to consider those projects that look more like this and less like a complex of piers that all extend well beyond the 5-foot pool.
I agree with that.
So
that would tend to be pretty precise, as cutting that pier off.
There is a place for common sense, but I will tell you, the ones I was asked to review did not look anything like this.
So, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So what you're saying is, if you were asked to interpret the 5 feet at the front, that you could do that interpretation?
I think that would likely, depending on the individual project, fall within the generally.
Yeah, I think the other piece of, tonight, there was 30-some applications that was presented, and John said that only maybe one of those, as everybody said, probably would meet. So what distance were they? They may have been beyond. I don't know.
I wasn't asked to look at those.
We didn't have water depth on the end of the pier.
He said it was 33, and he looked at four of them or something.
Something, yeah.
Okay, do y'all want me to go to the planning commission Thursday and say we got a concern with this particular part of the ordinance, and let the planning commission decide what they want to do with it? Is that what I'm hearing? Or am I hearing specifics talk about the 5 foot and what we talked about, or just throw it at them and say we got concerns here, what do you think it should be done?
Define should generally.
Just drop generally out of it and put shall, and the other thing is allow a 35-foot dock.
Well, if I say
regardless of depth.
specific, I'm telling them what to do. And then we'll listen.
Mr. Chairman, did Mr. Spencer get a second on his motion?
What was the motion?
I don't know. If he did, I'm ready to make one.
No.
He did, okay.
That was stopped.
Can you repeat the motion again for us, please?
I don't recall the exact language for a motion, he just said he motioned.
But I think it's.
I made the motion, we send this back to planning commission, let them do it, and then you said don't, that we have to send this back, letting them know what we want them to do. And so that, then I was told not for the motion. So therefore, I have a motion now, that since I didn't get to make the other motion. Our motion was send it to the planning commission to make it to 5 foot, not generally, make it plain with that, and to allow anybody to go out a maximum of 35 feet from their dock, from their property line, if they've already got 5 feet of water at the side. And if you got a 35-foot dock for commercial use that goes 100 yards down alongside that thing, they can park boats every 8 feet.
That's the motion.
Yes, sir.
Your second?
We're still sending it back to them.
Yes.
We'll take a look at it.
Yes.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Barlow. Further discussion. Let's not repeat ourselves, fellas. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
We got to send
Nay.
I didn't hear it from everybody. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Harper?
Nay.
Mr. Havisey?
And what's the expectation date that this is going to come back to us?
The date?
Yeah, that we can vote on this and get something cleared up for these.
He said April.
I will do everything I can to bring it in by on March 22nd, just because I found out that was a holiday.
No.
First meeting in March is what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
he said no.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yeah.
Mr. Barr?
No.
Mr. Byers?
No.
Motion fails.
3 of 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Barnes.
I move that we send to the planning commission suggestions to look at, but I ask for a joint public hearing by March 10th between the board and the planning commission. But they got a work session that we send them one suggestion that Mr. Muller was saying earlier, and some other things to clean it up a little bit. Hell, I ain't smart enough to figure out some of this stuff. But I wanted to have a joint meeting set by March the 10th between the board and planning commission, but on that work session, have them to look at this latest thing that Mr. Muller came up with, as well as some cleaning up the language that Mr. Mullins is much smarter than I am. Well, let me back this up. I move that we have a joint meeting with the planning commission on March 10th and have discussion, point blank.
No discussion until March 15th.
Well, I mean, they'll do what, I mean, they do what they do. Y'all can submit stuff and talk to the planning commission.
You said you don't want to send it to planning commission.
No. I said that a
You
joint
just
meeting.
voted not to.
No. I want a joint meeting between the board and planning commission, public hearing. And we can take input and things like that and vote
We
then.
got a motion. Second.
Second.
Now we get into discussion. I'm not seeing how that saves us time.
Well, it does because,
We've got 2 meetings with the planning commission members this month left.
right, but on the 10th, we can act on it.
Well, you wouldn't want to have a lot of discussion acting on it at the same time.
We may have to.
You need to have something there that's been thought through pretty heavily before the 10th. I don't have any problem with acting on the 10th.
Right.
But we've got 2 planning commission meetings before the 10th.
You got 2 work sessions.
And we got 1 work session,
Right.
1 meeting, and another work session.
Right. But
We're crunched for time. I'm just trying to, let's make the most of those 2 meetings is what I'm thinking.
well, you got the work sessions, so Dale gonna be there, Jeremy gonna be there.
We got a work session and meeting, regular planning commission meeting this Thursday. 2 weeks from then, we've got a work session. Then you got the March 10th.
What do you mean? Dale?
The very capable Mr. Amanda Rattleblock has found a provision in the Virginia Code that Jeremy and I were just talking about, and that is that if we do hold a joint meeting, we could likely make the deadline for advertisement. If we can have an advertisement in the newspaper for Monday, we can probably adopt on March 10, as early as March 10.
I just don't want us to come to a joint meeting, now you got 14 people talking around. ideas before we get to March.
Whether it's a good idea or not, you can decide, but legally, I think we could have it such that it could be adopted by as early as March 10th.
Well, I think what we do, we talk to each of our planning commission member and get the ideas that we have and let them talk about it in the sessions.
Because you're going to be able, you're going to have to present something on March 10th to vote on.
I doubt,
You're going to have to present something at the public hearing.
I'd be very surprised if we don't have something that they'll.
So we're saying at this point that everybody's going to talk with their planning commission member, ideas that you have, and leave it up to the planning commission to meet with us on the 10th, and then throw it back out on the table and see where it goes.
Yep.
And then we'll act on whatever that comes out to be
On March 10th.
along with the public input at the
March
public
10th.
hearing on March 10th. Does everybody know what the rules are?
It's a good option. I'll support it.
Now, any further discussion? Because we do have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion is 5-2, I believe. Mr. Myers and Mr. Spencer. Nay. Okay.
Did you vote against both of them?
I mean, what's the difference in the planning commission if we could meet with them? But it's fine.
It's a joint.
Yeah.
Just another knee-jerk reaction to come back and bite us on the butt.
You're not going to meet with them until the joint.
That's all it is.
They have 2 workshops in the meantime. They can earn
I
that.
mean, Steve.
I thought that was my job.
What's the difference in being an independent?
They're not doing any more than they did when they got here tonight.
Joint public hearing.
Let's move on. We beat that one hard enough. Next item is 4-7, committee report. Any committee report?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't know the rest of the board, no, I just said in the packet, but I want to thank y'all for y'all support over the years for Berry Mill Road. The project came in under, $900,000 under what it projected to be. It was $900,000 less. VDOT had that 1.4, came in at 590.
I was going to have that much, so. It was interesting at the last meeting we had, we presented to the status of it. Yeah, that's good. Okay, any other committee reports, Mr.
I'd
Haslett?
like one on the regional juvenile detention center, and Mr. Goodwin and I went to the last meeting, and we got some good news, and since he's the financial expert of the county, I'll let him explain it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and gentlemen of the board. I sit now on the Finance Committee for the Rappahannock Juvenile Center, and I'm also attending the board meetings with Mr. Havasey, and have come in on the tail end of their budget process, and I have some good news to report on that standpoint. They have a projected budget for fiscal year 12 of approximately $6.19 million. That's total operational expenditures for their facility. That's down from $6.28 million in FY11, so it's approximately an $84,000 reduction. And that's a good thing. They've got a couple of other good things going on. Our forecast contribution to their ongoing operations is approximately $314,000 for fiscal year 12. And in FY11, they forecast $252,910 total for our contribution to their operations. And so while it sounds like that's actually an increase, if you recall from a couple of meetings back, we had to make a supplemental appropriation to true up what we spent, or our total child care days at the Rappahannock Juvenile Center. And so what we've actually committed to their ongoing operations from a year-to-date standpoint is actually $347,000, and we haven't finished off the year yet. So actually, next year will be a reduction from our actual expenditures, assuming they stay within their forecast. A couple of other things that are noteworthy. They've had a very conservative budgeting process over the years, and that's resulted in they've generated some excess fund balances over the years. And basically, you got roughly, I think, $5 million, if memory serves, in fund balances. And they're rewarding the localities, which is something that we don't see too often in these types of entities. And the way they're doing that is they've moved, the biggest way they reduce their budget is to move significant sections of their budget into what they call a contingency column. And if they have to dip into that contingency column, it comes out of their fund balance instead of being passed on to the locality in additional expenditures. So I'm very pleased with that. Our costs are going up there, there's no question about it, but they have a fiscally conservative group running the place. They're passing their savings back to the localities, and I think that's a good thing. The other thing, it may save us additional money as we fund that entity from an ongoing standpoint, or our part thereof, is that they've got a bond issuance that's outstanding, and they're going to reap some benefits, I'm relatively certain, from refinancing that based on positive market standpoint right now. So that's my report, and it's going to be a reduction from the current fiscal year. And I can answer any questions or do further research as you see fit.
Any concerns, comments, questions?
Thank you.
Next item is appointments. Anybody got any?
Yeah, I'd like to appoint Mr. Jackson to the Health Center Commission, reappoint.
You can just say point of order and refer back to 6 and 6.
Yeah, Mr. Anthony. Hold on.
Did I skip one?
Yes, sir. You're talking too much.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and finish the form real back up.
His name is this.
Anybody else? Mr. Barnes, make a motion after that.
So moved.
Mr. Barnes is appointing Mr. Jackson to Health Center Commission. Second by Mr. Havasi. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed 7-0. I had a big arrow on my sheet, so I missed item 6. Item 6 is resolution authorizing transfer of funds between the general fund balance and CIP fund balance for funding assigned for Zion's Crossroads development.
Would you like me to provide some background on that? Happy to do so. We have it appropriated approximately $7.5 million in the FY11 CIP for the Zion Crossroads expansion. Based on the competitive bidding process, the total estimates came in at over $9.6 million, leaving us with a shortfall of approximately $2.2 and change million. And thankfully, we have, through GASB 54, designated part of our fund balance, basically those connection fees that are generated from Zion Crossroads water and sewer water connections for ongoing capital projects and expansion in that area. So we have 2.504 million to be exact in the general fund available to cover the shortfall, and approximately 2.267 will be necessary. So the way this process will work is we need to make a budget transfer, which is largely just a journal entry, moving those funds from the general fund into the capital improvement projects fund. And at the next board meeting, we'll have a public hearing, which is necessary to appropriate those funds into that specific line item for expenditure. And we'll also award the contract, assuming the appropriation goes through at the next meeting. We are required to have a public notice, since that's greater than 1% of our total budget.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mr. Barnes, second by Mr. Havasi. Further discussion or questions to Mr. Goodwin? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item was added to 6 was Mr. Barnes' parties. Was that yours? Okay, I'm sorry. I just thought Mr. Barnes didn't have the party.
That's all right. No, gentlemen, in light of what occurred last weekend over there with the group of people that got involved in the fight and the shooting and all this at the fire hall, it looks like we're going to have to do something about getting an ordinance passed that requires these people to provide for security and to make sure that they do stick to the amount of people that are allowed inside of these facilities. I think there's like 400 people out there, and they're only allowed to have 175. And the other thing is that they show evidence to the county that they've obtained the ABC permits for that particular day.
My question, Mr. Mullins, can we legally do that, or throw it back to MOG to make those regulations? What's our options here?
I honestly believe that the MOG would be the appropriate way to handle it, although I also think that we could enact some local legislation. If you want to direct me to come back with some recommendations, I'll be happy to do that.
I got no problem. I just want to make sure that we have security at these places and that the people are safe.
Mr. Chairman, Originally, I talked to Mr. Spencer and some other board members about concerns. I got some phone calls, but I would like to see it handled probably through Chief DeBay and the people that own these places, and we set up a uniform kind of deal where you got to have, if you're going to have alcohol, you show the alcohol license, or for example, I'm a member of I'm on the board of directors of a 501c3, and we're required to show insurance. We have to get the proper ABC license, and we have to have security in the event that we do. So I think it's for the welfare of the public and the public at large, and we pay for you Louisiana County deputies when we host an event. And but I'm like Mr. Spencer, I do have concerns, but I'd rather see it handled through the MOG.
Yeah, and just one other comment, I think there are requirements as far as the number of people can be assembled in a building from fire codes and so forth, and I think it's a good avenue. But I think insurance and also some type of, for liability and some type of enforcement oversight is really needed. And
the policies are not that much, Mr. Chairman, board, and you make the policies payable to, for example, if it's a county building, whatever, the policy is made payable to Louisa County, and most of them are about $1 million minimum.
So it's consensus that the MOG is possibly the way to go, and I think Mr. Mullins needs to look through it and make sure that they can do what we think we want them to do. Is that the message?
And he can check with Albemarle County. Glenmore Fire Hall, they require you to have police when you use their place.
And I think I said in the email I sent around to people is, if they work with this, maybe Commonwealth Attorney Office and the Sheriff's Office, make sure that everybody embraces this, because if an officer arrives at the scene, such as he did the other night in my district, it's tough.
Am I correct when I said that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mullins look
Absolutely.
at MOG perspective and just see if that will resolve and get to where we think we want to go. If that doesn't work, it'll back up on us. Okay, Mr. Mullins?
Yes, sir.
The next line is 6B. That was the addition we had, a resolution to proceed with the parking lot and fencing at the middle school. Fiscal year 2011 capital improvement plan project. That was added.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Spencer, second by Mr. Barnes. Discussion.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we're in the process of spending, maybe spending about $8 million for some enhancements to that complex down there at the high school, and I understand some of that, if that plan goes through, some of it almost backs up to this area. And it doesn't appear to me that this is an essential item, and that as much money as we're spending and with the capital improvement program that we're looking at, is that we ought to reserve these funds for things that are really essential.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I think I heard 3 no's. Who said that? You heard 4. Had 4 no's? 3 here, 4 there. Okay.
Y'all played with slingshots when I grew up.
So 4-3 nays, William? Correct?
I vote yeah.
Roll count, please. I'm not sure what's
Mr. Harper?
Nope.
Mr. Hennessy?
Nope.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
No.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Byers?
No.
Mr. Gentry?
Yes, so it failed 4-3. Right? Okay, moving on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can I move that we have money left over from the project at the, this $8 million we can use to do that?
That $8 million, such a big question mark on it, I would be scared to even touch that.
Yeah, I bet I catch you nowhere near a playground with the kids. You hard on kids, man.
That part of it, maybe so.
Those speaks for itself. So, getting back to, I think I should be at item 9 now, county administrative report.
A couple things I wanted to bring your attention to. First, there is a memo that was requested that was prepared by Ms. Rottelbach that summarized some accomplishments in 2010. That can be found between pages 27 and 36 of your board packet. Additionally, there's some new potentials for tourism events. One is a memo and a letter regarding some triathlon events scheduled for Lake Anna in April and October of 2011. There's a thank you letter from Captain Joe Pagic from the Game and Inland Fisheries about our response to the fatal hunting incident. There's an advance email notification from DEQ regarding Dominion's application for a major water withdrawal with an attachment. And towards that end, I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you some discussion about our own water withdrawal at Lake Anna. I will say that the issue has been raised since I can remember, and certainly before that. I included at your desk a letter that was dated from 2008 from Mr. Linticum in support of, it's dated April 16th, 2008, and it was regarding the environmental scoping process for North Anna Power Station Unit 3 in the combined license application. The board was expressing their support but wanted to communicate some concerns. I won't reread the whole letter, but I will say that it's been brought up since that point. Additionally, I know that the board, Mr. Byers specifically, had a question that he wanted to put to the board, and I think now is probably, Mr. Byers, as good a time as any. You want to address this?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has requested, as a result of an application from Dominion Power, to receive comments regarding the construction permit and all those different things, a 3-inch rise in the water level and so forth. And it seems like to me that now is a time for us to respond by being included in overall lake level planning that will take place, and that this is focused on. And I understand that the comment period ends on 14th of February, and that if we send a letter of our intent or a letter explaining that our need to be considered in that overall plan. And I don't know, maybe a question too. Mr. Mullen, do we have to have the application in by then to be considered, or is it?
No, sir. The application does not have to be in by then. As a matter of fact, there's several preliminary engineering matters that have to be addressed before we can get to the actual application phase. It's not as easy as just walking down to DEQ and tearing off a form and giving it to the lady at the window. It's going to require some planning on our part, but we do need, I think, to begin registering at regular intervals, just like we did in 2008, our desire and need for consideration of our withdrawal permit at Lake Anna.
And we could include in that letter what we anticipate that our needs would be.
Yes, sir.
But I think what we're really saying is it's going to be very crucial to get something in by the 14th.
Yep.
And Ms. Mullen and I have talked about that. I'm sure he's putting something together or already has. So,
I have, and I met with Dominion officials as recently as this morning, from 9 until roughly 10:30, talking about this very matter. I also have a letter, 2 letters in here. One is announcing the annual event at Graves Mountain Lodge. We need to RSVP not later than February 11 to the Richmond District Office of Eric Cantor. There's a letter on page 85 announcing, and I believe this is in the boundaries of town of Louisa and also in Mr. Spencer's district, the opening of the new Louisa Chapel of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, just off Highway 33 near the Sage Building. They're asking for RSVPs by 12 February. Pretty excited about that. If you go by, it's a quality building, nice addition to the neighborhood. There's a letter from Senator Houck offering support and assistance during the upcoming legislative session. I will say that it's been a short session and things have moved very quickly, but we've gotten good responses from our legislative delegation this term.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, yesterday the money bills before it come out. We got any feedback from education yet?
We do not. I don't have any numbers yet.
I talked with David Blunt Friday, and he says Sunday he thought was going to be the date that we have some numbers on education.
A couple other things I wanted to talk to the board about. One has to do with consent orders. The State Water Control Board met last week. It was a fairly, it's been a long process getting here to these consent orders, but I'm pleased to present to the board 2 endorsed consent orders, one for the Zion Crossroads wastewater treatment plant and one for the Louisa Regional Sewage Treatment Plant. In addition to enacting the sewer use ordinance for Louisa County tonight, all 3 of those things represent major improvements to our infrastructure. I would also add to that approving the transfer of that money for expansion of the Zion plant. It should be noted that the regional plant has been undergoing expansion for about the last year and is almost finished. The Zion plant is getting ready to begin and is expected to be operational in 2012. So we're making some really major improvements to our infrastructure. The consent orders, the Zion Crossroad expansion, DEQ. One other thing I wanted to bring up, in the county administrator's report, after we acquired the property at Route 15 and East Jack Jewett Road, commonly referred to as the Wells property, there's about 125 acres at that property that has been under till for as long as I can remember and was under a lease. That lease has been released. It was leased to a family farms. It was estimated at about 125 acres. And that ground, if we don't do anything with it, will be a source of potential revenue that would go untouched. I think it's reasonable to consider at this point releasing it to an appropriate party, and I wanted to talk to the board to gauge your desire to have me explore that further. I'd hate for useful farmland to just sit vacant and empty, to just turn into something to mow. That's not good for anybody, so I'd kind of like to gauge the will of the board in that direction, then bring you back some ideas depending on what you want me to do.
It has my support. Anybody object?
The only thing I ask you, Mr. Mullen, is make sure that when you bring back that between now and then that you get somebody from the Natural Resource Department to look at it and get some soil tests and get a farm plan on it.
Okay.
Make sure that we're following proper guidelines and on that piece of property.
I don't really know the proper person to contact for that. You do? Okay.
I'm ag man, I got to come on now, guy.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mullen, if we had an agreement, it certainly would have a stipulation in it that if we look at reuse and want to use it farmland for any of that point, we'd be able to utilize it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir.
It'd be all over there.
Mr. Mullins, before you move on, can I have a request that the page, 27 to 44 on the things that the county has done in the last year or so?
Yes, sir.
I'd appreciate it if you tear out those 6 pages and make sure they get delivered to the Central Virginia.
Absolutely.
Because I'll tell you what, if anybody takes the time, and I wanted to congratulate Amanda and you for getting this all together and all the department heads, but there are so many good things that have been happening in the county over the last year that our staff has done and saved the county so much money, and also effectively utilized a lot of the facilities and smarts that our people have. And I would love to see that go to the paper and let Greg look through this and write an article on it.
Well, thank you. Very nice.
My comments about these accomplishments, I'd like to also maybe have a section of, rather than each department, is have overall comments like, we did open up a new elementary school. We did not raise taxes. We were able to work close with the school board and not lay off teachers. We kept the classroom sizes where we need to be. There's some big areas like that I think we're missing in this document.
Well, that's true, and to the extent that it's incomplete, please communicate those to Amanda so that we can get those out to the public.
I know Ben's got a lot of good things in his department. I think we missed some of the big items.
I don't know. Yeah, but the school board wants to take credit for that.
We take credit first.
The ones that I tell you the truth, the ones that really make me the proudest, the ones that make me feel the best, have to do with the fact that we experienced a 17% reduction in children in foster care in 2010, reaching our lowest numbers since 2008, that our independent living program for youth 14 years and older was completely revamped. I think that that's important. 8 of the 20 children adopted were supported with CSA funds prior to adoption. This resulted in significant cost savings of about $154,000 right off the bat in 2010, or 7% of the entire CSA budget we saved just by finding kids permanent homes to be in. And I have to tell you, the greatest feeling I ever had was being at that ceremony when the adopted children were actually placed in the homes permanently. A young man walked up to the judge. Judge Whitlock and I were standing together. Young man walked up. I know his case and I know him. He's 8 years old. I won't tell you his name. 8-year-old young man, just a cute young man wearing his little tie and his dress shoes, and you could tell he came up and he stood and he waited politely. Judge Whitlock asked, "Young man, you look like you have something to say. Do you have something on your mind?" And he stuck out his hand to the judge and he said, "Judge, I just wanted to say thank you for finding me a family." And I'll tell you this, at that point, I didn't think that the judge would be able to say anything else the rest of the day, but that's a big deal. And it is the job of government, I firmly believe, to do for the people the things that they cannot do for themselves, not will not, but cannot do for themselves. That young man could not find himself a family, and we could. And every single one of you on this board needs to feel good about that. And that's real differences in real people's lives. It saved real money for the county. It's the ultimate win-win. And that section on page 28 and 29 also represents going from what was considered not one of the top performing DSSs in the state to now being considered potentially in the next few months one of the top 3 in our region. And I think that's a really big deal. It took a lot of work.
Well, I think that there's a lot of items here. Obviously, it shows that we did a lot of work in 2010, but at the same time, if you're going to put everything here in the paper, which probably needs to all be there, somehow or another, we've got to bring out some items that may be more important to the public than others, because they're not going to read all of
Sure.
them.
No, but I'm sure Greg's going to write the article. He's not going to copy it word for word.
No, you don't have to worry about that.
And it's been my experience that board members and chair people and vice chair people who choose to write letters to the Central Virginians sometimes get publicized, even if they're reasonable.
Well, the paper normally finds negative things to write about. Good luck to find negatives in this, right? I'm just saying, it's not material here. Maybe we want to highlight some things more so than others. Just
I
like
think that's
DDS.
It's true.
DSS.
Yeah.
Just expensive.
2 comments. Number 1, the kid that you were talking to was 6 years old. I saw him over there, and he had his first birthday, his 7th birthday, was the first birthday party he had ever had. And I met the mom in Walmart. She was getting all the stuff ready for his birthday party. She said he just went to pizza when he found out he'd have his own birthday party.
Amazing thing.
That's a shame, lived 7 years, you know.
Just an amazing
I
thing.
know he had a birthday party. And the other thing is on this contract with the land, farming it. They've already put biosolids on that thing a couple of times, and I think that's something we need to do to protect our water supply is say this is what's not going to happen, or what you can or cannot use.
Do you think it'll run into Camp Creek?
No, they'll say it will. I just want to see it saturated in their water supply. That is nothing but mark.
It is pretty mucky in there. We did have some discussions. We're getting ready to meet with the Historical Society about the crank building. There is a problem with the roof, or as some say, the roof. But there's a problem, and so we're going to need to get something worked out with the Historical Society. I just want to put that on your radar. I don't know the extent to that, but there's a problem.
And in their contract, they're supposed to take care of repairs?
There is some language in the contract about repairs. Yes, sir, Mr. Spencer?
Let them do it.
Sorry. You have something?
Yeah, there was some correspondence that just came in the mail. We received a letter from the PVCC Board of Directors. They will be conducting their March directors meeting in Louisa at the Art Center, and they're requesting the Board of Supervisors, the School Board, local Chamber of Commerce, and other members of the community to participate in that meeting at 5 o'clock. So we'll send out an invitation through the county system for your meeting, but you need to confirm that you'll be able to attend.
I got individual invitations, y'all get one?
We did provide that to them so that you could have enough notice for the people to come in, so we wanted to make sure it's kind of on top of your radar.
Some of some support.
I got a letter from people.
Yep. And then the other letter came in from Chuck Hoffman with the Phoenix County High School media program. He has been promoted within the school system to take on some additional responsibilities, which conflicts with the supervision of recording the Board of Supervisors meetings. So we are going to begin discussions about maybe developing a remote camera system in this facility to continue having one student come in but have permanent equipment here so that the students can still be involved with the civic aspect of Board of Supervisors and also gain some experience. But for an unknown amount of time, we won't have students coming to the meetings for recording.
I think we do need to do a resolution of appreciation to Mr. Hoffman for all that's done for us.
Very good idea.
Yes, sir.
Motion have a second.
Yes.
Second, Mr. Hassel. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Allison, you get that one?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next item is consent agenda items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Barnes,
Second.
second Mr. Spencer. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Bills approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barnes for approval, second by Mr.
Any comments?
Mr. Hampton. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Minutes approval, and that's for, as I stated earlier, this is for January the 18th and February 5th.
And it's also for January 25th, which was the, I believe, a Tuesday meeting that you had.
Okay, three of them.
Three of them.
January the 18th, January 22nd, and February the 5th.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barnes,
Second.
second by Mr. Spencer. Discussion?
I just abstained from the 25th because I wasn't here.
You get that, notice, Council?
I wasn't
Abstain
there.
from the 25th.
Ms. Byers, sustained the 25th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So, two of them are 7-0, one of them is 7-0-1.
6-0.
6-0-1. I can't add it.
And you're in.
Yeah.
Maybe the restroom.
I think the next item is closed session.
So moved.
Motion to go to closed session. Motion by Mr. Barnes. Second by Mr. Hampton. Mr. Hampton. And this is to discuss, in accordance with 3111A, discussion of personnel. And the next item is discussion in section 3.2, 3711, acquisition of properties. So there is section 2.2-3711, consultation with legal counsel or possible litigation. And the fourth thing is for section 2.2-3711, purpose discussion of award of a public contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Closed session. I need a motion to go back in session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Barnes,
Second.
second by Mr. Spencer.
Hang on just a second.
Discussion.
Hey, Bob gone.
What is it about those two?
Hey, did you see the budget, Dale? From the Senate? Did you see the Senate budget? Did you get it?
I was just looking at it.
We all get going.
They gonna hold BOS.
We got a motion and a second, get it back in session.
instead of a 3%
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
That's the Senate now. Need to certify?
Exactly.
ET moved to certify.
Second.
Second, Mr. Barnes, roll call, please.
Mr. Hennessy,
Yes.
Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Byers,
Yes.
Mr. Gentry,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Need a motion adjourned.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Barnes. Second by Mr. Barlow. Discussion? All fair say aye. Opposed, motion passes 7-0.
All right.
Thank you.